Exterminate Xenos. Cabril, Odysseus said to the Doom Slayer beside him, we are about to reach our mission objective. In the hangar of the scout ship, everyone was ready, and the most elite warriors of the Imperium of Man had gathered here. 300 custodians and 10 Doom Slayers. This powerful force could conquer a world with ease. Now they were gathered, all with the same goal, to board the alien battle moon. 3 more hours, Cabril nodded, more precisely correcting Odysseus' statement. 2 hours and 57 minutes, the custodian retorted, not to be outdone, giving an even more precise time. They exchanged smiles, showing no signs of tension, and did not take the dangerous battle moon seriously at all. It was as if the terrifying Rangdan before these warriors were not a threat, but a flock of lambs waiting to be slaughtered, or ants to be crushed. Beep! A communication came from inside Cabril's armor. His expression changed, it was an urgent communication from the captain. Sir. The captain's voice was urgent as he rapidly reported a sudden change in the situation. A new alien fleet has entered the Morse solar system. Odysseus looked at Cabril. They exchanged glances, the sudden news had altered the situation. In the hangar, a holographic projection appeared, showing the scene observed by the ship. The alien ships surged out of the warp into real space, reinforcing the previously thwarted alien fleet. The situation took a sharp turn for the worse. The Primarch's plan had encountered an unexpected development. Should they continue to execute it? What should we do? A communication came through the psychic link. A brother from another scout ship asked Cabril. Wait a moment, Cabril replied through the psychic link. As a senior member of the Legion, he was obliged to answer. Odysseus also waited. This concerned the Primarch of the 21st Legion, and his sons held more authority than him. Wait. A faint, distant voice came through the psychic link, halting the operation and instructing the scout ships to remain on standby in the void. We obey your command. The Doom Slayers immediately knew who was speaking through the psychic link. Wait, Cabril said to Odysseus, the Genofather's objective is to annihilate the alien fleet. We cannot disrupt his strategic goal. We will continue to wait until the Gene Father destroys the alien fleet, then we will act when the opportunity arises. Cabril spoke eloquently, giving logically clear reasons and using deduction to mask the psychic link. That is indeed the case, Odysseus nodded. The Primarch's strategic objective was indeed as stated. He quickly raised a new concern. Can the Primarch's fleet destroy the newly arrived alien reinforcements? Cabril silently looked at the holographic projection. The alien capital ships that had entered Morse now numbered 300, with countless other vessels. He must have a plan, Cabril was without worry. No matter when or where, he had full confidence in the Gene Father. Odysseus nodded and moved to the custodian ranks, telling his comrades to continue waiting. The custodians had no objections. They followed the Emperor's command and accompanied the Primarch to war, naturally respecting the Doom Slayer's opinion. Moreover, the environment on the Argent Newer ship was extremely comfortable. Cabril walked to one side. He didn't need to explain to his brothers, they knew everything. Aliens. Daring to delay my return to the embrace of the benevolent Father, I must take good care of them. From the black-shrouded jar came a low curse. The Rangdan had earned the enmity of a great unclean one of Nurgle. Clang, clang, clang. Cabril kicked the jar, signaling the demon to behave. Don't misunderstand. The great unclean one's voice was fearful. I am targeting those damned aliens. I have no intention of going against Argent Newer. The great unclean one dared not seek revenge on Argent Newer, but it had great courage when it came to avenging itself on other life forms. Better be. Cabril walked past it, heading towards the bridge to understand the specific situation. Alien ships continuously appeared in the void, emerging from the warp and, after a brief rest, immediately heading to the front line. Blazkowicz sat steadily at the command console, looking at the dense array of warships on the star chart, a smile on his face. Excellent. He slammed his hand on the armrest of his throne, clapping in approval. The Rangdan reinforcements had arrived at just the right time, validating his plan to lure the enemy deep. Days ago, a psyker had informed Blazkowicz that warships were approaching in the warp. Now, seeing the fleet's scale with his own eyes, he couldn't help but cheer, breathing a sigh of relief. If the Rangdan forces hadn't come, he would have found it difficult to deliver on his promised honor and merits. Blazkowicz slowly closed his eyes, sinking his consciousness into the warp, sensing a part of himself. Feeling the closeness of something familiar, he showed a joyful expression. His good brother had arrived on the battlefield just in time. In the Morse solar system, due to the arrival of the Rangdan reinforcements, the holographic star map was filled with ships as far as the eye could see. Humans. Our fleet will crush you. On the public channel, the indescribably eerie voice of the Rangdan rang out, filled with the arrogance of certain victory. They cheered. Within the Morse solar system, over 500 capital ships had gathered, with countless more destroyers and frigates. With such immense power, no intricate tactics were needed. Simply overwhelming the enemy with ships would be enough, humanity would not be able to resist. This was a qualitative change brought about by sheer numbers, a massive fleet holding complete initiative. However, the light of the warp shone again, and new ships arrived in real space. The leading ship, with the cool color of the north wind and a massive wolf head totem carved into its hull, the Herald, had arrived. Blaskowitz, my good brother. Russ, wild voice echoed through the comms, boosting the morale of the Imperium of Man. Two of the Emperor's sons had arrived in Morse. How could the Xenos stand against their combined might? Russ, it's been a long time since I've seen you. Blaskowitz's smile was genuine and gentle as he looked at Russ in the holographic image. His brother, unseen for many years, had changed greatly. He wore a suit of mastercrafted power armor, inscribed with Fenrisian runes. He wielded a power sword with a wolf's head for a hilt, its blade inscribed with ice blue runes and jagged blue fangs. Russ' golden hair was tied into a messy ponytail, with braids at his temples. His face was unchanged, but his demeanor was wilder. You truly didn't lie to me, a massive war awaits me here. Russ' face was full of joy. The Herald's augurs had detected the Rangdan fleet. How could I ever lie to a brother? Blaskowitz declared confidently. He felt no guilt now. Before the Rangdan reinforcements arrived, he had felt a bit uneasy, but now he was fearless. As soon as the Void forces of the First Legion had given him a warning, Blaskowitz had contacted the closest legion for assistance. He hadn't expected Russ to be the closest. But at first, the Lord of Wolves, the Great Wolf, had not intended to help. In his impression, Blaskowitz's personal abilities were too strong, he could solve all problems on his own. Even with the dangerous Rangdan Xenos, if he came, it would just be watching, offering no value. Blaskowitz quickly sent an urgent message via Astropath. He explained that the First Legion was being besieged, and a large number of Xenos were entrenched in Morse. Only then did Russ agree to come. He also stated that if his brother had lied to him, he would have to properly reward the Space Wolves, and the two brothers would have to get thoroughly drunk, with Argent Noor providing the fine wine. Blaskowitz naturally agreed at once, prioritizing getting Russ to come. To prevent Russ from being discovered, Blaskowitz had the Crucible sword traverse the warp, erasing the fleet's traces within the warp. We'll catch up later, I need to clear an operating area first. Russ' expression became serious. He saw the scale of the alien fleet and knew this battle would be difficult. As it should be, Blaskowitz opened the star map, indicating a strategic point to his brother, and also provided intelligence on the Rangdan. Russ quickly scanned it, his expression changing repeatedly, his mouth twitching, revealing two chilling canine teeth. Damned Xenos, they even obtained intelligence from the Imperium. They clearly came prepared. He gnashed his teeth in hatred. More detestable than the enemy were traitors from within. Russ' expression was stern. It's not the First Legion's recklessness, this is a trap to hunt our brothers. As a Primarch, Russ quickly realized that this trap was not aimed at the First Legion. The Rangdan's objective was to besiege or even kill a Primarch, the First Legion had merely stepped into the minefield. The unexpected nature of this event surprised both the Imperium and the Rangdan. I'll deal with the alien ships first. Russ nodded. He had understood the alien intelligence and knew what he needed to do. Space Wolves. The Primarch's wild howl boosted the morale of the human side, tear through the Rangdan whelp's defenses. Make them regret offending the Imperium of Man. At the Great Wolf's command, the Space Wolves' fleet surged forth, like a pack of hunting wolves. Another Primarch had arrived, and the war between the Rangdan and the Imperium grew fiercer. The Morse solar system, a seemingly simple star system, held extraordinary significance far beyond its existence. More than 500 Rangdan capital ships and two Primarchs of the Imperium. Blaskowitz suppressed the joy of reunion, refocusing his gaze on the star chart to plan a counterattack and hunt. A cold smile played on his lips as he watched the Rangdan forces on Morse world. The value of this Rangdan force had been proven. Rangdan could not afford the loss of tens of thousands of elite warriors. Autumn, continue to pressure the enemy ground forces. Blaskowitz issued a simple command. The Doom Slayer knew what to do. By your command. Autumn responded solemnly, accepting the trust of his gene father. Blaskowitz nodded, not responding. His focus shifted to the fleet Russ had brought. Argent Noor's First Fleet, the 1st Legion Fleet, and the newly arrived reinforcement fleet combined for over 400 capital warships. Among them, Russ' fleet was massive, he had brought 200 capital warships. On the holographic map, the Space Wolves fleet spread out like a pack of wolves, pouncing on the Rangdan fleet, driving it away and destroying it, clearing a safe space. Wolves. Chew the Xenos fleet with the Fang formation. Russ roared excitedly from the Hierarchal, directing the fleet's maneuvers. Show your ferocity for my brother, as fierce as the storms of Fenris, sweeping away all enemies in your path. Awoo awoo. Russ wolf cubs responded to their gene father, howling as they charged forward. They had never seen their father so excited. After many years apart, Russ was eager to show his brother the wild warriors from Fenris. At the Primarch's command, the Space Wolves fleet spread out, with heavy forces on both flanks, like a ferocious giant wolf opening its hunting maw. The fangs in its mouth were woven from lances, macrocannons, and torpedoes, slowly chewing the Rangdan in its mouth. The throat of the giant wolf was the Hierarchal, swallowing any stragglers. Under the wolves' relentless pursuit, the Rangdan fleet was forced to retreat, ceding a portion of space as a buffer. While Russ was in action, Blaskowitz was not idle. He ordered his fleet to maintain a defensive formation, staring intently at the star chart, observing any new reinforcements or disruptors that might enter, and how the battlefield might change. As the Wolves' fleet drove them back, he indeed discovered a difference. The Rangdan fleet, due to its excessive size, showed signs of cumbersome command and coordination, with frequent errors. It was like a healthy adult suddenly gaining hundreds of pounds of fat, inevitably slowing down. HMPH. Blaskowitz snorted, muttering softly, it seems the Rangdan fleet is not entirely harmonious and unified. The original Rangdan fleet could still contend with him somewhat, relying on its numerical superiority. Now that reinforcements had arrived, they had become a burden to the Rangdan commanders, losing the fleet's subjective initiative. Good. Blaskowitz exclaimed with delight. Rangdan's blind reinforcement had ironically become a breakthrough point for his side. He opened the star chart and began a new round of deployment. There was no reason to refuse the fat meat Rangdan had offered. As Blaskowitz was deploying his battle plan, the holographic image lit up, revealing Russ' imposing figure. Blaskowitz, the wolves are driving out the Xenos, do you have any new arrangements? His golden eyes gleamed with divine light, asking his brother about his next move. Though Russ was wild and unrestrained, he knew his place and would never overstep. His question held deep meaning, handing the initiative to Blaskowitz, willing to follow his brother's arrangements. You run wild, and I will build an unbreakable wall. Blaskowitz looked at his brother with a smile in his eyes, a simple sentence settling the broad strategic direction. Blaskowitz, of course, respected the initiative Russ offered, and he was willing to trust his brother's abilities. Let Russ destroy the Rangdan fleet to his heart's content, biting them firmly and not letting go, making it easy for the Xenos to enter but difficult to leave. As for himself, he would build a sturdy wall and continue to execute the attrition tactic. Alrighty then, Russ grinned, showing his teeth. He understood his brother's arrangement, just kill and bite the enemy to his heart's content. The two extraordinary Primarchs could understand each other's arrangements with just a simple exchange. After we eliminate the Xenos, you must reward the wolf cubs. Before closing the communication, Russ reminded Blaskowitz again not to forget the promised fine wine. It was as if nothing in his eyes could compare to a sip of fine wine, appearing to be a complete drunkard. Naturally, the ships carrying fine wines and delicacies are already on their way. Blaskowitz readily agreed, reassuring his brother. For such crucial support, Russ asked for fine wine and food, not promises or favors. Blaskowitz kept this bond of friendship firmly in his heart. You just watch. Russ licked his lips, a look of anticipation flashing in his beast-like eyes. He had heard his brother mention that Argent Noor's fine wines were uniquely rich and mellow, such a good thing must be tasted. The Space Wolves fleet will hold the prey, they won't be able to escape. Russ solemnly promised, a cruel smile on his face, unless they pay a price that satisfies the wolves. I look forward to the wolves' performance. Blaskowitz nodded, what he said was what he thought. Since his separation from Russ, he had returned to Fenris to reform the military system and reshape the Legion's culture. Now, at their reunion, Blaskowitz greatly anticipated the wolves' performance. He eagerly awaited to see what kind of combat power the Astartes, imbued with Fenrisian culture, would display. You just watch. Russ said with a mysterious expression, then closed the holographic communication. He brought up the Legion overview. The 13 great companies were fully organized and ready for action. Wolf Cubs. The Primarch's low growl echoed through the Legion's communication, delivering a pre-battle rallying cry. We are the Wolves of Fenris, the Space Marines of the Allfather. It is time to show our strength. Blaskowitz Novik. My closest brother, a king from the stars. Show him your ferocity, let him inspect the fangs and claws of the wolf pack. Russ, voice changed, the impassioned roar turning into a sharp frost. Trample Rangdan's pride, let the detestable Xenos understand that humans have never been their slaves. For the Allfather. For Russ. For the Primarch. The space wolves roared fiercely, letting out howls of excitement. The Emperor had etched the loyalty and wild strength of wolves into their genes, it was time to unleash it. This grand-scale battle must bear the name of the wolves. The howl of the great wolf inspired the pack to fearlessly advance. Use wolf pack tactics to destroy the Xenos, peripheral fleet. The entire Space Wolves fleet sallied forth, attacking from the right flank of Blaskowitz's defensive line, and under Russ' wisdom, assaulted the Rangdan reinforcements who had not yet established their footing. Russ was highly intelligent, he had carefully studied the intelligence Blaskowitz sent, as well as various useful tactics. He quickly organized the Legion fleet, using the same rotating attack as his brother, to launch an assault on Rangdan. He was more aggressive, the Space Marines commanded by the Primarch unleashed unimaginable combat power. The Space Wolves fleet, like a pack of attacking wolves, under the command of their alpha, tested Rangdan's strength. They each performed their roles, constantly dividing, encircling, and using wolf pack tactics to destroy Rangdan warships. The wolf pack was hunting, using lances and macrocannons as blades to tear at the massive, soft flesh of Rangdan, constantly weakening the prey's vitality. Facing the fierce assault of the wolves, Rangdan quickly responded, sending ships to counterattack the human fleet. Rangdan's move made the eyes of the two Primarchs in different locations light up. Rangdan's defeat was now a foregone conclusion. Facing the Imperium's reinforcements, the Xenos commander did not choose to retreat, but continued to fight, which played right into their hands. The Imperial fleet's command chain was not at all chaotic. The presence of two Primarchs greatly boosted the fleet's morale. Although the number of warships was insufficient, their combat power definitely far exceeded the Rangdan fleet's. The wolves fiercely attacked the right flank with flexible and varied tactics, catching the Rangdan reinforcement forces off guard. In desperation, the Rangdan commander had no choice but to take a risk, sending a fleet from near the battle moon as reinforcements. Good. On the star chart, Rangdan's tactical adjustment gave Blaskowitz an opportunity. 1st Legion Fleet. He opened the Void Lord of the Legion communication, summoning the 1st Legion's fleet. The Lord of the Legion is always ready. The Lord of the Legion immediately responded, his excitement barely contained. The excellent commander had a keen sense of smell and knew the time for a counterattack was ripe. Blaskowitz commanded him, you will attack from the left flank, flanking with the Space Wolves, forming a pincer movement against Rangdan. Relieve the wolves, pressure, push back Rangdan's lines, and force their fleet not to maneuver freely. Understood, Lord Primarch. The Lord of the Legion stood ramrod straight. He knew the importance of the action, as it was a great opportunity for the Legion to redeem itself. The 1st Legion's warships gathered, pressing in from the left flank, forcing the Rangdan to hesitate in redeploying forces. The tide of this battle had completely turned. From the moment Primarch Leman Russ, the Wolf King, arrived, the human fleet shifted from passive to active, launching their first offensive against the Rangdan. A massive void war erupted. The accompanying chroniclers were teary-eyed, their tears reflecting the flashes of exploding warships. They wielded their pens, documenting this battle that could only be described as an apocalypse. Every moment, a warship exploded in the void, emitting a dull wail. Proud warships, carrying hundreds of thousands of lives, became coffins under the assault of lance beams and macro cannons. Life was so fragile, warm lives vanishing into the void, becoming burial goods for cold steel. Blue plasma and orange lance beams intertwined, shields overloaded instantly, and torpedoes slammed into hulls. It's so beautiful, so magnificent, a chronicler by the viewport knelt, leaning over to write with a quill, using words as a medium to depict the most poignant chapter. Russ' mouth twitched, and he roared at his guards, throw him out. The chronicler ignited an uncontrollable rage within him. The sacrifices of the space wolves, the deaths of imperial humans, became beautiful and magnificent in the eyes of these literati. If beauty and magnificence were such, then no artistic embellishment, no literary rendering was needed. Russ, personal guard, the wolf guard, pounced, their large hands grabbing the chronicler by the collar of his neck, dragging him out of the bridge. No, no, no. The robed chronicler reached out, grasping at the viewport's scenery, wailing and pleading incessantly. Let me see. Please, great Primarch, let me see, I must record all of this. The people of the Imperium must know all of this, let these magnificent scenes be forever etched in the annals of the Imperium. Pa. Russ' spit was incredibly accurate, hitting the chronicler's pages. Get them out. From now on, there will be no more chroniclers among the space wolves. A Primarch's command was not to be questioned. Chroniclers on space wolves' ships were swiftly expelled. Those with humble attitudes were imprisoned and guarded, while those who resisted stubbornly became scribes, continuing to contribute with their words. Sir, the Rangdan fleet has dispatched ships from its rear to intercept us, the Adeptus Mechanicus advisor warned, his cogitator linked to a divinatory array, detecting the Rangdan's movement. Don't worry about them, Russ waved dismissively, his hands resting on the command console, making no counter-response. Blaskowitz is in charge of the grand strategy. My brother will solve this problem, he would not betray the space wolves and put us in danger. The array of cogitators vibrated their bionic throats, continuously reporting the battlefield situation. The First Legion's fleet is attacking the Xenos from the left side of the stellar disk. The Xenos' intercepting fleet has turned back, forced to engage the First Legion's attacking fleet. Send a message, Russ' golden eyebrows furrowed as bad news came from the fleet battle. Tell the space wolves to be cautious when boarding, the Xenos' warships are full of traps. Just now, the space wolves attempted to board the bio warships, only to discover that the ships' interiors were filled with Rangdan slave races. These races, completely different from humans, were entirely controlled by the Rangdan and responsible for their space operations. Their fearless resistance, fighting in the narrow, slimy conduits, resulted in the deaths of hundreds of space marines. Russ immediately shared the intelligence with Blaskowitz and the humans, making the Xenos race information transparent to prevent unnecessary losses for Allied forces. On the holographic image, Russ' large hands moved like phantoms, constantly maneuvering the fleet's movements, performing detailed micromanagement. Compared to his return to the Imperium, his command style had matured considerably, and his actions were more seasoned. The space wolves plunged into the enemy formation, fiercely clinging to the Rangdan fleet, making it difficult for them to escape. Void combat was protracted. 10 hours had passed since the space wolves joined the battle and the First Legion engaged the enemy. The First Legion, experienced in fighting the Rangdan, achieved significant results on the left flank, eliminating several small fleets. The space wolves' offensive was orderly yet wild, destroying 50 enemy capital ships with very minimal losses. Blaskowitz sat like a chess player, the unfolded battlefield situation before him like a giant chessboard. His opponent was the Rangdan Space Fleet commander. First Fleet, advance 1 million kilometers, Blaskowitz issued the order, setting the First Fleet in motion to intimidate the Rangdan fleet. The First Fleet's communication was swift, he immediately felt the Royal Majesty accelerate, beginning its push forward. On the chessboard, the First Fleet's ships moved forward, approaching the Morse star by 1 million kilometers. Soon, the Rangdan's defensive fleet responded. They advanced the same distance and began to increase their altitude, appearing as if they intended to bypass the star. Fleet to the left, assume a posture of attacking from the left side of the star. Blaskowitz's expression was calm, ignoring the Rangdan's movements. War was a struggle for initiative, one must never be led by the enemy. The Rangdan fleet immediately turned, advancing from the First Fleet's rear left, preparing to use this opportunity to move towards the planet Morse. The Xenos commander's intention was clear, to force the First Fleet to turn back and defend. Full speed ahead, objective directly to the battle moon, Blaskowitz issued the order again, the fleet's engines engaged at full thrust, heading straight for the battle moon. As expected, the Rangdan fleet turned again, circling around from the fleet's rear right. Blaskowitz had enough capital to take risks, he dared to confidently entrust Morse to Autumn, allowing the Rangdan fleet to go to its aid. But the Rangdan commander dared not gamble, the threat of the Royal Majesty was like a sword of Damocles, hanging over the battle moon. The commanders on both sides were like playing a war game, constantly adjusting fleet postures in a strategic contest. On the bridge of the Hierarchal, Russ observed the overall situation, realizing his brother was playing a very new game. His eyes lit up, and he carefully observed the changes in both sides' postures, learning the tactical thinking behind them. Pulling and shifting. Two simple objectives, but the underlying tactical thinking was vastly different. Russ watched as the Argent Noor fleet and the Rangdan fleet danced in the void, pulling and probing each other. This kind of pulling was a war without gunsmoke. For 3 full Terran days, the battles on the left and right flanks raged fiercely, with fleet combat gradually reaching its climax. Yet, the central fleets of both sides had not fired a single shot, as if unrelated to the battlefield. Gentlemen, we are about to launch a general assault, Blaskowitz announced in the holographic channel, making the final arrangements before the general assault. After 3 days of attrition, the results of the 2 flank forces were diminishing, and the Rangdan were also adapting to human warfare. Blaskowitz clearly realized that continuing this way would yield no more significant results. Once losses exceeded expectations, the Rangdan would all withdraw. Now, the only way was to charge through. A price must be paid to achieve substantial results. The timing is just right, Russ agreed profoundly. Blaskowitz's timing for the attack was roughly what he had estimated. The skirmishes were over, it was time to charge in and feast. War was never bloodless, his brother had done his best, wearing down the Rangdan's strength to the maximum extent. Yes, Blaskowitz composed himself, maintaining his dignity before all the commanders. The Rangdan will not send any more fleets, the investment in this war has already exceeded their expectations. They are likely considering abandoning this place now to avoid greater losses. Sir. To hold the Xenos, the First Legion is willing to charge first. Grand Master Urian tightened his face, not daring to let the Legion's spirit falter before the 2 Primarchs. Only this way can we prevent the Xenos from escaping. Blaskowitz nodded, his gaze passing over him, instead looking at the Lord of the Void Sky Army. Only through sacrifice can the Xenos be severely damaged. I obey your command. The Lord of the Legion knelt in the holographic image. The First Legion will not bring shame upon you. Blaskowitz nodded gravely, then looked at Russ, his Primarch brother. He wanted to say something, but then remembered that his brother had depth. Russ, like himself, was a Primarch who understood the cruelty of war. A worthy death. Blaskowitz said nothing else, but spoke the words they had both understood on the vengeful spirit back then. A worthy death. Russ nodded heavily, then relaxed his expression and smiled crookedly. Don't forget your promise. Of course not. The heavy atmosphere instantly vanished. Blaskowitz snorted with a laugh, scolding, want to compete with me again? You just wait for me. Russ' eyes widened, remembering his defeat, and he pointed at Blaskowitz in the holographic image. This time I'll drink you under the table. Blaskowitz showed a scornful expression, spreading his hands and looking down on everything. I fear nothing. Russ grinned and abruptly cut the communication. Blaskowitz's expression became serious again. Notify the fleet to launch a general assault on the Rangdan. All forces, attack. My lord. Sophia stood by the throne, faithfully performing her duty. Fleetwide communication is online, and your projection has been clearly cast onto every battleship. Blaskowitz nodded, straightening his posture, presenting the most resilient and majestic image to all Imperial fleets. Space Wolves, First Legion, First Fleet. In the projections of all the bridges, the magnificent figure seated on the throne simultaneously lit up. He was exceptionally heroic, with deep eyes and extraordinary personal charisma. In the Space Wolves fleet, Russ smiled faintly. His extraordinary brother, in terms of outward appearance and temperament, indeed aligned more with human aesthetics than he did. The captains of the First Legion knelt on one knee on their respective bridges, remembering the teachings of the Emperor's son. On the Argent Noor ships, the people of the Noor stars listened to King Noak's declaration in their final moments. Citizens of the Imperium, fellow humans. Blaskowitz spoke slowly, without the expected uplifting tone, his solemn voice was full of sorrow. I am ordering you to die. The Primarch's voice, coupled with the heavy atmosphere, felt like a lead weight, crushing the hearts of everyone who heard his voice or saw his image. Death is terrifying. It symbolizes the end of everything, the final destination where all life ceases. You will fear it, and this is not a sign of cowardice, no one is unafraid of death. The Primarch's magnetic voice expounded on the inevitability of death, yet unexpectedly eased the anxiety in the mortals' tense hearts. Just as the Emperor's son said, death is the end of everything, no matter how much one resists, it will eventually come. But I admire you. Blaskowitz's voice deepened, then slowly rose as he applied the oratorical knowledge he had learned. I admire the courage of every mortal. The great Primarch, his words held no falsehood, and his eyes shone with admiration. You set out from your respective worlds, challenging the endless, profound void with your courage, illuminating humanity's path with the radiance of your courage, facing death without fleeing, but confronting it with bravery. Upon hearing this, the mortals proudly puffed out their chests, they were the bravest among them. You do not possess powerful bodies like mine, nor the ceramite armor of a space marine, nor even clothes to cover your bodies. All these reasons combined make the ordinariness of mortals seem so mediocre and humble compared to our extraordinariness. But my admiration also stems from this. Blaskowitz's solemn voice suddenly rose, becoming exceedingly impassioned. The courage of the most ordinary life, when facing terrifying Xenos, to pick up a weapon, is purer than that of a space marine or even us. Hearing the Primarch's address, the mortals could not stop their tears and choked up. Their efforts had been seen and given the highest affirmation. The Space Marines also listened silently, then turned to look at the kneeling mortals. Even the extraordinary warriors pondered the Primarch's words. The Primarch's words were like a thunderbolt, exploding in their minds. If they were to shed this armor, without the power bestowed by the Emperor, would they be more courageous than mortals when facing Xenos and the Dark Void? The war is thus, the Imperium's destiny has come to a crossroads. You have witnessed the Randan threat firsthand. Now, I order you to die, to fight the Xenos to the death. Blaskowitz roared, making everyone straighten their backs. With your deaths, lay the foundation for the Imperium's victory. With your deaths, overcome the Xenos' threat. With your deaths, secure the peace of the human race. Are you willing? The Primarch sternly demanded, his voice beating a war drum, questioning every single person. Willing. Of course, willing. It was just that this unspoken sentiment was buried deep within their hearts. No one had ever asked them this way before. Willing. Deep within the ship, slave laborers in tattered clothes uttered faint whispers. Like a chain reaction of atoms, one after another, the most humble people, who usually remained silent, spoke their smallest desires. I am willing to die for you, willing to sacrifice for the Emperor. The lowest echelons roared with the purest conviction. Their voices were incredibly small, but they ultimately converged into a surging tsunami. For the Imperium. For the Emperor. For the Primarch. For victory. The mortal captain stood up, drew his ceremonial command blade, pointed it at the Randan fleet, and let out a deafening roar. With our sacrifice, let us lay the foundation for the Imperium's victory. At this, morale was unsurpassed. Blaskowitz roared, all forces, attack. Annihilate the Xenos. As if the battleships were also inspired, their engines emitted blazing plasma trails, charging unhesitatingly towards the Randan battleships. All the battleships transformed into fervent longswords, eager to drink the enemy's blood. Wolf cubs, do you hear me? Russ, wild roar echoed through the Space Wolves communication channel. With the blade of sacrifice, slaughter the Imperium's foes. For the Allfather. For Russ. For the Primarch. For victory. The wolves howled, piloting their battleships towards the Xenos, the wolf cubs secretly competing, their courage not to be outdone by mortals. In the Morse solar system, the human fleet poured out, declaring the beginning of the decisive battle. Humans, let us set aside formalities and fight a real battle. Just then, the Randan's full-channel challenge arrived, still as arrogant and disdainful as ever. I will smash your brains onto the floor and trample them. Russ responded to the Randan, his fleet's objective clear, charging towards the Randan's largest flagship. I wouldn't mind having another dog as a pet. The Randan fleet commander's imposing manner was not to be outdone, responding with a war of words. At the climax of a decisive battle, one must not lose face even if one loses the battle, for if morale differs, the battle will be a complete rout. The Imperium's combined fleet advanced without regret, colliding with the Randan bioships, becoming entangled in a mutual slaughter. Both sides crashed like waves, each wave consisting of dozens of battleships, locked together and refusing to yield. The Imperium's fleet was numerically disadvantaged, but its high morale was like adrenaline, injecting extraordinary power into the fleet. The fearless passion caught the Randan fleet off guard, and in the initial engagement, they fell behind. Pay attention to fleet posture. Seeing this, Blaskowitz's thick brows furrowed as he issued a warning. Courage does not equal recklessness. He constantly monitored the battle, coordinating the deployment of the front lines, preventing any hot-headed captains from breaking formation and leading damaged battleships to self-destruct. The difficulty for a commander lies in both boosting morale and preventing soldiers from getting carried away by their passion. Under his command, the fleet, using the star as a base point, advanced in a sweeping motion, like the second hand on a clock face. The Wolves' fleet, led by Russ, flanked from the other side of the star, encircling the Randon fleet. Lances, macrocannons, torpedoes, fighters. The Imperium of Man deployed all its weapons, holding nothing back. The Royal Majesty and 3 Gloriana-class battleships advanced abreast, serving as 4 fire support points to sweep through the Xenos fleet. The Royal Majesty was the largest, equipped with Argent Noor technology, personally operated by Gates, and possessed the most formidable firepower. Its macrocannon array could launch projectiles at half the speed of light, far exceeding the Imperium's conventional weapons, which reached 1/10 the speed of light. Projectile kinetic energy increases with the square of velocity, so the power increase is far from linear. The battleship charged at the front. No Xenos battleship could withstand 2 macrocannon blasts. She was an unstoppable force. Every weapon volley shattered several Xenos battleships. Because of such powerful firepower, the Argent Noor fleet received special attention. 200 capital ships led the fleet, attacking from the front. Blue plasma continuously bombarded them, and the impact of heavy biotorpedoes caused the void shields to flicker incessantly. Some smaller battleships, unable to evade in time, exploded in the void, creating dazzling flames. Blazkowicz's expression remained unchanged. He understood that war inevitably involved sacrifice. Although Argent Noor ships were advanced, they were not invincible. What pleased him most was that Argent Noor's advanced teleportation technology allowed personnel to transfer before a battleship exploded. Highly automated battleships required few people to operate, avoiding heavy losses of naval personnel. After this naval battle, these novice naval personnel would also become qualified void veterans. The Royal Majesty's shields flickered. As the spearhead, 20 Randon capital ships were besieging her. Gates' consciousness was directly linked to the battleship, mechanical arms adjusted systems with inhuman efficiency, calculating the trajectories of Randon firepower, and evading with incredibly precise maneuvers. Boarding, the blue rim of its disc suddenly turned red, emitting a mechanical alarm. During a shield flicker interval, Randon boarding parties have entered the shield. Ha. Blazkowicz gave a mirthless smile. Let the Iron Man brothers stretch their limbs. Didn't they say their bodies were getting rusty? Confirming your command, contacting the Iron Man brothers now. Gates' mechanical hand moved like lightning, completing the corresponding operation. Iron Men, attack. Rangdan boarding pods breached a weak point on the Royal Majesty, and hundreds of elite Rangdan warriors streamed in. Before their eyes, there were no human thralls as they had imagined, and the vastly different internal structure of the warship was also not what they expected, with almost no trace of human thralls. At both ends of the wide corridor, the Rangdan warriors saw several tall machines approaching with heavy footsteps. The machines varied in form. Some carried 4 heavy mechanical legs on their backs, with their torsos equipped with over a dozen weapons. Others were humanoid, slender and delicate, moving with an elegant and refined gait. Fragile, scarce, not enough to kill. The machine's synthesized voice uttered a few words, and although devoid of emotional fluctuations, the contempt within was palpable. The Rangdan warriors did not hesitate, raising their weapons and firing blue plasma bolts. I'll go first. The slender humanoid machine flickered, and its body vanished from its original position. In the next instant, short-range teleportation brought them into the Rangdan ranks. Their bodies were as black as mirrors, thin blades extended from their hands, and their crimson electronic eyes gleamed with killing intent. Aliens, die. The killing machines manufactured by humans were born with an inherent hatred for aliens. During the Golden Age, galactic aliens were not friendly. Humanity stood tall in the galaxy, creating the Golden Age not through diplomacy, but through killing machines. The Iron Man machines moved with extreme swiftness, their finger blades exceptionally sharp, specifically designed for close-quarters alien slaughter. A long mechanical arm swept through, and before the Rangdan could react, their personal shields failed to stop the blades, and they were instantly cut into pieces. Having struck successfully, it leapt lightly with its legs, its body spinning in the air, hanging upside down from the ceiling of the corridor. Such terrifying killing machines struck terror into the hearts of the Rangdan warriors, who raised their firearms and shot at the terrifying machine suspended from the ceiling. Before the plasma could get close, the Iron Man's computational unit completed its prediction, and the black shadow flickered again, plunging back into the alien ranks. They spread their arms, tiptoeing like elegant dancers, initiating a dance of death amidst the barrage. The blades in their hands were unstoppable, gliding effortlessly over the alien bio-armor, the fine cutting lines proving the completion of the kill. With every leap and descent, Rangdan warriors instantly perished, their brains within their armor precisely shredded. Two Iron Man of the same type cooperated, their electronic communication making them seem like one, throwing the Rangdan formation into disarray. Target locked on aliens. As their comrades wantonly slaughtered the aliens, the two heavily armored Iron Man immediately opened fire, their bodies unleashing an endless array of killing weapons. Disintegration rays, plasma cannons, gravity weapons, decay fields, disruptor cannons. The two heavily armored Iron Man's mechanical legs sank slightly, and the weapons mounted on their torsos opened fire en masse, overwhelming the Rangdan troops in an instant. Miniature missiles from their four legs poured forth, and the weapon emplacements on their platforms, various weapons locked onto targets, unleashing devastating firepower. The former were elegant assassins, the latter heavy firepower tanks. Ancient creations, a single heavily armored Iron Man machine, delivered the firepower equivalent of a company of mortals. In the face of such powerful firepower, the Rangdan personal shields instantly overloaded, and their bio-armor was blasted into particle dust and mangled corpses. Its control over firepower was incredibly precise, perfectly eliminating the Rangdan aliens without harming its Iron Man brethren. The Rangdan's counterattack was weak and ineffective, all plasma and ion streams were blocked by the Iron Man's multiple, overlapping shields. 10 seconds of concentrated firepower, highly effective in the dense formation, left not a single living Rangdan standing from those who had emerged from the boarding pods. The wide corridor was filled with traces left by various weapons, only scorched earth lay before the Iron Man. The assassin emerged from the remaining Rangdan corpses, its steps still elegant, and its mechanical voice said to its comrade, "Crude." The heavily armored Iron Man retracted its weapons, activated its weapon cooling system, and its eyes flashed as it replied, "Efficient. Madam Sophia, you can send out engineering machinery to repair the damaged warship, we will proceed to the next boarding point for support." No need. Sophia's digital signal conveyed the message, they have already dealt with the alien threat. You are the slowest group. The four Iron Man stopped in place, their electronic eyes scanning each other, then turned back the way they came. Aliens, fragile. The Iron Man's electronic synthesized voice echoed through the corridor, seemingly still wanting more. A minor interlude in the fleet battle, Argent Noor's ships had various solutions for Rangdan boarding attempts. Sentinels, Custodes, Iron Man, Doom Slayer. These high-end combat forces could teleport to boarding points immediately. The 1st Legion's 10,000 Astartes, integrated into the Void Fleet, also had the capability to defend against Rangdan boarding. With the Space Wolves fleet commanding a full legion, and a Primarch personally present, Rangdan boarding was nothing short of suicidal. The combat and slaughter in space were incredibly brutal. In the engagement zones between the two sides, the wreckage of human and alien ships was ubiquitous. And within the spatial domain, the bodies of humans, Rangdan, and other aliens, thrown from ships, filled the cosmic void. Their frozen bodies, contorted in grimaces, silently spoke of the brutality of the battle. And the ground battle, as the space battle commenced, also became brutal, like the sharp teeth of two meat grinders, churning through flesh and bone, grinding them into paste. Various heavy cannons roared in unison, like the warhammers of a god of war striking the ground, the trembling earth unsettling the heart. The air was filled with the smell of gunpowder, and the unyielding stench of blood, mixing together to create a sickening odor. Around the human positions, the former wasteland had become a swamp, a dark red mire formed from human blood mixed with the ashes of corpses. In the swamp, zombie-like humans stumbled forward, only to be struck down by bullets in an instant, sinking into the dark red bloodmud. Such a terrifying, hellish scene tested the spirit of every soldier, honing their limits of endurance. "Sir, they are coming." The Mechanicum master reported to Autumn. He had detected sounds mixed with the bombardment shockwaves, indicating the Rangdan intended to assault by tunneling underground. There are a total of 100 targets, 70 heading towards us, and 30 towards the Imperial positions. Autumn looked at the tunneling locations and shouted through the comms, "Sentinels brothers, your work has arrived." He flicked his finger, transmitting the message to the Sentinels, entrusting a specialist to handle the matter. Understood. The Sentinels replied via comms, "We will eliminate them immediately." Autumn nodded, then shared the intelligence with Grand Master Urian, to assist the Imperial defense line in preparing for the underground assault. A strange scene unfolded along the Argent Noor front line. 1,000 sentinels gathered at various points along the front, at exactly 70 locations, arrayed in neat lines. "This is it." The veteran used his rifle butt to draw a horizontal line on the ground, having the new recruits line up. Aliens are directly below at a depth of 100 meters, passing here in 10 seconds. This will test your blind-firing skills. The Sentinels recruits aimed their weapons at the ground, awaiting the veterans' command, ready to use their dimension rays to cut down the aliens underground. A fleeting opportunity, the veteran did not give a verbal command, but held a timer, ready to press it. Prepare. His tone was calm, his eyes fixed on the approaching countdown. The Sentinels recruits held their long rifles, their eyes fixed on the holographic image inside their helmets, watching for the convergence point of the angles. Fire. The veteran roared, pressing the timer in his hand. His calculations were precise, even factoring in the recruits' reaction time. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. The 10 recruits continuously activated their dimension rays, cutting into the underground tunneling machines. They fired as they retreated, constantly shooting at the signal points. The dimension rays penetrated everything, passing through 100 meters of sand and rock as if nothing, cutting into the tunneling machinery below ground. The Rangdan advanced underground, their warriors extremely tense, going to raid the human defensive lines, to strike from within. Then they saw blue rays penetrating downwards from the top of the tunneling machines, continuously cutting through everything inside the compartments. Their warrior comrades were shredded, the tunneling machine engines were destroyed, and they were trapped underground. Soon, the seismograph reported back that the tunneling devices had stopped moving. Well done, lads. The veteran waved his hand, signaling dismissal. The Rangdan aliens underground were already trapped. Technicians can move in now. Come drill holes and fill them with concrete, completely sealing off the aliens. Such scenes occurred simultaneously along the Argent Noor front line. Autumn used the unique properties of their weapons to deal with the assaulting aliens. Meanwhile, on the Imperial front line, the First Legion was already prepared. When the aliens burst forth from underground, a group of black-armored tough men awaited them. The First Legion suffered a total loss of approximately 10,000 warriors in the ground battle. The remaining 30,000 warriors were all gathered at the base, and naturally, they easily dealt with the Rangdan assault. The ground war moved with the space war, but the Rangdan in the space battle could no longer maintain their advantage in naval combat. The heavily damaged alien fleet, no longer able to consider anything else, decided to deploy the battle moon. 2 battle moons, one remained in place to prevent a surprise attack from the left fleet, while the other moved extremely slowly towards the space wolves. The Royal Majesty's weaponry deeply concerned the Rangdan overlord, severely limiting the battle moon's firepower advantage. The Rangdan fleet held back the Royal Majesty, concentrating heavy fire on the right flank, where the fleet's ferocity was close to tearing through their defensive line. The Xenos' movements were quickly noticed. These 2 massive artificial celestial bodies had always been a key focus for humanity. No one could ignore their power. My brother, you wouldn't be unprepared, would you? Russ contacted Blaskowitz via holographic communication, asking if he had made any preparations. He knew that his brother, being skilled in textbook warfare, must have already prepared. Though he thought that, Russ said something else. If you have no other way, I will have the Hrovkal ram it, then destroy the Xenos' creation. On the Hrovkal's bridge, Russ' hands clasped together under the table. He was genuinely a little nervous. He was afraid his brother would say, all right, at this point, the only way is to ram it with a battleship. I am well prepared, Blaskowitz's response reassured Russ. He also understood that while Russ' words carried a joking tone, they also represented a viable combat plan. Facing such a behemoth, a Gloriana-class battleship seemed minuscule. Only a desperate ramming attack could halt the battle moon's advance. I look forward to your surprise. Russ grinned and closed the holographic communication. He could now focus on the fleet battle before him, without worrying about that thing's threat. Blaskowitz closed his eyes, linking to his son's psychic beacons through their psychic connection. Commence operation. In the scout ship's hangar, Odysseus paced anxiously. The mission target was slowly moving away, while the Doom Slayers were still meditating. Suddenly, all the black-armored warriors moved, and Cabril shouted to him, Captain Odysseus, the time is now. Bored. Odysseus roared at the Custodes, not even asking where the information came from. With the Morse solar system in chaos, taking action was better than doing nothing. Cabril nodded, signaling his brothers to grab their corn weapons and board the transport ship with the Custodes. They had waited too long for this moment, eager to destroy the Xenos' creation and secure victory for their gene father. The hunt has begun. The demons whispered in glee. After a long wait, they could finally leave the real universe and return to the warp. Rest assured, everyone, we will explode loudly and brilliantly, living up to your expectations. Less talk. A doom slayer, carrying a jar, shook it violently, making the great demon slam into the runic barrier, leaving him disoriented. The golden and black armored warriors boarded the transport ship, flying out of the stealthy scout ship's hangar, drifting like a leaf towards the battle moon. The internal transport ships of the scout vessel used optical camouflage. Aside from initial acceleration, their engines dared not ignite. There were few warships around the battle moon, the frontline battle was intense, and all warships had gone to the battlefield. This provided an excellent opportunity for the boarding party. The battle moon's internal port was wide open, with only a few damaged warships undergoing repairs. The optical stealth transport ships, in addition to visual stealth, only had minimal scanning evasion. If the battle moon were to scan its immediate vicinity now, it would detect the approaching landing craft. Unfortunately, the intense fighting on the front lines meant the scanning function was focused at maximum power on distant space, filtering out minor disturbances nearby as floating space debris. The Doom Slayer pilots precisely adjusted their course using inertia, stealthily entering the battle moon's port. That's enough, he quickly got up and rushed to the hangar, where his brothers helped him don his flight pack. Prepare for descent. The cabin top will open in 5 seconds, and we will thrust upwards. The custodes remained silent, looking up at the top of the transport ship, their flight packs already activated. In the communication channel, the auxiliary AI counted down. 3, 2, 1. As the final countdown ended, the top of the transport ship burst open with a bang. For maximum speed, directional explosives had been installed on the transport ship's top, allowing everyone to deploy instantly. Move. Before the Xenos could react, the flight packs suddenly engaged, propelling the boarding party skyward. What powerful armament! Odysseus exclaimed in the communication channel. The plasma thrusters of the Argentner pattern boarding wingsuit were tearing through physical limits. Data showed it could fly at Mach 3 in the atmosphere, and in space, it could instantly burst to over Mach 10. The flight pack resembled bird wings, with numerous automatic joints that adaptively adjusted posture. 10 wing-like plumes extended from the wing bones, ejecting multi-state jets, making the entire flight process incredibly smooth. The lightweight structure and immense power allowed the shield captain to enjoy the flight pack's experience. Everyone, fly upwards, Cabral announced over the comms. He had marked a location. Only by passing through there could they truly enter the battle moon's interior. Alert! Alert! Red lights flashed throughout the battle moon. The warship's AI reported. Enemies have invaded the spaceport. According to the AI protocol, spaceport access routes are being sealed, all technical personnel are to evacuate, and warriors are to intercept the invaders. The battle moon's AI reacted quickly, immediately sealing the spaceport and dispatching combat personnel. The Xenos know we're here. Be extra careful, Odysseus warned, leading the charge deeper into the battle moon. The flight packs built for Doom Slayers were incredibly fast, and the custodes could just about handle the reaction. Over 300 superhuman warriors moved swiftly and agilely, sweeping across the spaceport from above. Their agile figures were like birds amidst the complex Xenos architecture. Human intruders, prepare to die. The Rangdan boasted triumphantly, how could a small squad of over 300 people possibly harm this behemoth? You warriors, arrogant trash, dare to board our war fortress. The Rangdan cursed angrily. Lolos had sent back information that the golden armored warriors were incredibly powerful. Even human informants had relayed intelligence, speculating that the golden armored warriors among humans were even more formidable than space marines. But how much more formidable could they be? This was the battle moon, a single spit from each of them could drown the invaders. I'll clear the way ahead, Cabral accelerated, rushing to the front of the team, illuminating his dimensional halberd. The artificial intelligence had sealed the passage, but that couldn't stop them. The 3-meter-long, high-power dimensional blade sliced into the steel like cutting tofu, carving a large hole in the sealed door. Odysseus charged forward, his gleaming golden boot kicking open the foot-thick door panel, a perfect assist that wasted no time. Custodes, begin dispersing and penetrating, the shield captain gave the order, instructing the boarding party to split into multiple squads to further infiltrate the battle moon. This was a pre-planned tactic. Over 300 people divided into multiple small teams, making it difficult for the Xenos to determine the boarding party's exact objective. To create a diversion, each Doom Slayer carried a jar, making it difficult for the Xenos to distinguish between real and fake. Odysseus nodded to Cabral and was the first to charge into the battle moon's interior. His body experienced a slow descent as the internal gravity generators captured the flying Custodes warrior. However, the flight pack's anti-gravity device quickly engaged, and the wings adjusted in a series of motions, allowing the operator to hover steadily in midair. Good stuff, Odysseus thought with joy. This flight pack was an industrial marvel. He had no time for our reflection. Looking around, Xenos were rushing in from all directions in the steel hall. With such a scene before them, there was no need for words. The Custodes and Doom Slayers knew what they had to do. They tacitly increased the flight pack's output, not lingering in combat, and flew close to the hall's ceiling. Bang! 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 The Custodes, bolt guns fired, targeting and eliminating the Rangdan overlords to prevent their fire from interfering with the flying team. The Doom Slayers' shoulder cannons and weapons targeted high-threat objectives, with their flight packs at full power, flying at Mach 1 in the gravitational environment. Mach 1 was not the pack's limit, but the limit of the Custodes and Doom Slayers. Flying within the complex Xenos structures, firing to kill intercepting Rangdan warriors, and still needing to pay attention to their flight path. These ultimate beings among humans, piloting their flight packs like lightning, nothing could stop them. Rangdan overlords, wearing flight suits, came to intercept, but the two merely brushed past each other, and their bodies fell from the sky. Landing ahead, no flight space. In 30 seconds, the squad advanced 10 kilometers, entering a cramped pipe environment. The Rangdan couldn't catch up, their speed couldn't match the boarding party members. A Custodes warrior took a golden reconnaissance eagle from his waist and released it to scan the terrain ahead. We are still 200 kilometers from the outermost blast point, Cabral reminded solemnly. It must be detonated within that range to cause maximum damage. Our journey is a bit bumpy. Odysseus raised his arm, showing Cabral the images transmitted by the reconnaissance eagle. The Xenos are intercepting us ahead. They've deployed fighters and anti-aircraft fire, not allowing us to pass. Isn't that perfect? Cabral's voice came out relaxed from under his helmet. Fighters and anti-aircraft fire mean there's ample space inside. Once we get past them, our path will be clear. If all else fails, we have this. Cabral pointed to the corn demon weapon. It will make the Xenos fight among themselves. The Custodes were silent. They were ultimate beings personally forged by the Emperor, with superfluous emotions removed, making them more focused on the present and better serving the Emperor. Their charge was silent and swift. The Custodes, on a psychological level, would instinctively cooperate with their comrades. Coincidentally, the Doom Slayers were equally silent. After 10,000 years or more of mental tempering, their hearts were full of hardship, accustomed to lonely indifference. In terms of cooperation, Doom Slayers didn't need special notification through a psychic link. Tested warriors possessed a more intimate telepathy. Black and gold, equally tall warriors, silently rushed into the gate, entering the vast ecological space. A strip city, over 100 kilometers wide and endlessly deep, suddenly filled the superhuman warrior's vision. Several miniature artificial suns floated high in the sky, a glass dome mimicked blue skies and white clouds, and on both sides were sci-fi landscapes interwoven with steel. The ground was planted with various exotic trees, blue, white, and purple flowers mixed together, and an ecological river, shimmering with clear waves, flowed longitudinally through the entire ecocity. Such a scene should have been harmonious and beautiful, a place of peace within the battle moon. Now, in front of the ecocity, a large number of Xeno warriors had gathered, operating various anti-aircraft weapons, looking tense and ready. The human intruders had broken the harmony, they were charging in aggressively. Fire! Shoot them down! The Rangdan overlord said nothing, but pointed its command sword at the high part of the gate, and a psychic wave swept across the field. Various slave races, humans, Xenos, a mixed slave army, obeyed its psychic will. Spread out, draw the Xenos, anti-aircraft fire, and regroup at the marked locations. Odysseus, communication was brief and direct. The flight pack behind him ignited, and his body shot out like an arrow from a bowstring. Behind him, the Custodes warriors who had rushed into the gate's breach immediately scattered across the ecocity's sky, following the shield captain's movements. The Custodes knew their mission, to provide sufficient cover for the Doom Slayer's task. With their flight packs on overdrive, the Custodes broke the sound barrier, their bioenhanced joints and shield buffering systems working together to withstand the deadly inertia. Behind them, the Rangdan's anti-aircraft fire was dense and lethal, solid projectiles and energy weapons tearing through the sky. Crackle, 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 the sky shattered, sonic booms roared, and golden figures pierced through the barrage. The custodes, biocomputers, enhanced by bioalchemy, were comparable to precise biological supercomputers. They moved through the barrage, their extraordinary bodies enduring sudden increases and decreases in g-force during repeated stops and accelerations. With nanosecond reaction speeds, coupled with excellent physical capabilities, the custodes were more agile than ultra-high-speed fighter jets. Doom Slayers entering. Captain Odysseus spared a tenth of a second, at the moment of the densest barrage, to call his mission comrades to enter. His timing was astonishing. The dense anti-aircraft fire, drawn by 60 custodes, was no longer a fatal threat. The Doom Slayers immediately entered the gate, carrying their demon weapons, and continued forward under the cover of the custodes. The sky had become a chaotic mess, and the Rangdan's interceptor fighters had become a hindrance. The custodes demonstrated their flying skills, using the flexibility of their flight packs to stick to the belly or back of the fighter jets, forcing the automatic fire to cease. When pursued by fighter jets, they would instantly pull up and turn, firing the bolt gun mounted on their guardian spear, killing the pilot. Their flight paths were winding and erratic, tearing violent arcs through the barrage. Bang, bang, bang. Several distinct sounds, different from the others, came through. The custodes were not unfamiliar with them, it was the unique sound of oromite being hit. Like a reverse waterfall of firepower, several anti-aircraft shells exploded, and dense projectiles tore and enveloped the custodes. Amidst the flickering of their dimension shields, the custodes' personal shields instantly overloaded, and the wings of their flight packs were shattered. The Rangdan's morale was greatly boosted. This was the first time casualties had occurred among the human forces entering the battle moon. The custodes fell from a height of over 1,000 meters above the ground, a height where even oromite armor would be fatal. Gravity would make every highflyer pay the price. Loss of power pack, I will withdraw from this mission. The custodes confirmed via comms, activating the teleportation ankh on his hand. A blue-white light curtain emanated from the ankh, enveloping the custodes' entire body like a cocoon. Then, with a flash of white light, the falling golden figure vanished, completely disappearing into the air. Odysseus breathed a sigh of relief, seeing several custodes depart safely. Even without fraternal affection, their genetic code still compelled them to attach absolute efficiency to the survival of their comrades. The Primarch had indeed been thoughtful, valuing the life of every warrior. The Rangdan overlord froze, its mind racing, and it shrieked over the public comms, "Find the human transport ship, it's near us." It looked up at the heights. Human warriors flew chaotically like flies, heading deeper into the city. "You still want to leave?" The Rangdan overlord seemed to answer its own question. "Then we will leave first." After a brief thought, the Xeno overlord confirmed that the human mission was not suicidal. There was a spaceship outside for rendezvous. The humans wanted to destroy the battle moon and then leave safely. Humans will not succeed. Before you achieve your goal, the battle moon will leave here, taking you out of the real universe. Even if we are destroyed, we will make you lost in the warp. The Rangdan overlord furious shriek, watching the human assault team depart, received no response. The custodes and Doom Slayers, after a brief entanglement, had already broken through the anti-aircraft fire net. Along the way, there were also fixed defensive turrets, which could be avoided by dodging their trajectories. A distance of 200 kilometers, with an open field of view, the flight packs accelerated to 3 times the speed of sound, reaching the target in 200 seconds. During the flight, Cabral looked down, and the surface of the calm artificial river trembled for a moment. "I need to detonate the first bomb. The Xenos have activated the battle moon's engine, they plan to leave. The Xenos' next move must be stopped." Cabral warned over the comms, "Custodes, beware of the furious psychic impact." Understood. Captain Odysseus immediately responded. He had never seen the power of a demon weapon, but he had to respect it. "There will be a powerful psychic impact next, be careful not to get lost in it." He notified his Custodes comrades to avoid accidents. Cabral asked his brothers in the other assault team via psychic link, "How is your progress?" "We are about to detonate the demon weapon." With 2 missions proceeding simultaneously, he had to ask his brothers about their specific progress and timing. "Can detonate, synchronize detonation in 10 seconds. The psychic link relayed the response, making Cabral breathe a sigh of relief. He also knew the progress of his brother's team, which was not far behind his own. "Throw it down." Cabral ordered without hesitation, instructing his brothers to release the demon weapon. The Doom Slayer acted quickly, opening the detonation device, setting the synchronized time, pulling back the black cloth, and dropping the greater demon of Khorne. He. Goodbye everyone, I won't miss you. The bloodthirster let out a final, desperate roar, never to meet again. The demon container free fell from the sky, its runes glowing, emitting dense red lightning, reflecting the runes carved on the greater demon of Khorne's body. Come on, I can't wait. The bloodthirster spread its arms, allowing the power within its body to drain, the runes absorbing its power through the blood-red lightning. The bloodthirster's form dissipated, condensing into a red sphere, emitting a chaotic concept. Before it was fully detonated, the demon's concept began to corrupt reality. The Rangdan overlord felt very uneasy. Its race was naturally psychically powerful, capable of sensitively detecting changes in emotions. After the humans dropped an object, the controlled servant army's desire for slaughter began to rise within them. Do not look directly at that thing. It immediately ordered the servant army to turn around. Now was not the time to intercept the humans. If the influence was not eliminated, the servant army would go berserk in a short while. At that point, let alone fighting, whether they would even obey orders was another matter. Looking at the falling container in the sky, emitting a crimson, ominous light, the Rangdan overlord thought it was a new weapon developed by humans, specifically targeting their race's psychic control, a targeted weapon. After the servants turned around, the Rangdan overlord heard a malicious roar from within the container. Damn Xenos, feel the wrath of the blood god. What is that thing? While the overlord was still thinking, the container holding the demon exploded in midair. There were no dazzling fireworks, no deafening explosion, but a blood-red circular shockwave spread out. The essence of bloodthirsty rage, a psychic impact, ignored all obstacles, spreading through the cold mechanical constructs. At the moment the demon weapon detonated, Russ, who was in combat, looked up at the battle moon in the distance through the viewport, feeling two bursts of bloodthirsty malice erupt. In the warp, Khorne, upon his skull throne, sat up straight. He felt a bloodthirster return, one that had once been outside his sight. 0 comments 0 vote. Demon. He fixed his gaze on the real universe, the place where the bloodthirster had returned, and the blood god, lying back on his skull throne, whispered, an interesting idea. The moment the god's gaze descended, Blazkowicz sensed it. He narrowed his eyes, looking towards the battle moon's location, where 2 bloodthirster bombs had already detonated. And deeper in the warp, beside the soul forge, a demigod witnessed a burst of inspiration, demonic power being utilized by mortals. Just as he was about to investigate, he acutely sensed the Doom Slayer nearby. He immediately stopped, turning without hesitation, and returned to his abode. The Rangdan overlord was unaware of the changes in reality and the warp. It was currently insane. Creatures swept by the red shockwave were now utterly mad, with only one thought in their minds: kill. The demonic weapons had infected all life, the battle moon's warp jump halted abruptly, and the Rangdan in the control room were attacking each other. Their eyes were devoid of reason, filled only with the blood red of slaughter and bloodshed. There were no ranged weapons, only brutal close-quarters combat, every blade drawing blood, every sword piercing hearts. Only flowing blood could satisfy the surging desire for slaughter within them. Blades, teeth, limbs, anything that could make others bleed was put to use. What mission? What order? Kill. 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 The Rangdan, being mentally sensitive, were deeply immersed and unable to extricate themselves. The bloodthirsty desire made their brains tremble wildly. The servants, who were attacking each other, received a psychic signal from their overlord: kill. There were no screams or wails, only bloodthirsty, furious howls filled the battle moon. Within the chaotic war fortress, the artificial intelligence core glowed blood-red, its computational core receiving massive amounts of kill commands. After a brief shutdown, it quickly reconfigured its command logic, redirecting automated weapons to fire upon the servant armies. The Rangdan were supreme. Any life attacking the Rangdan should be eliminated. The entire battle moon was in chaos. Rangdan were killing, Xenos were killing, humans were killing, and the artificial intelligence was killing. Powerful. The blood god in the warp let out a pleased growl, his mouth widening. Meaningless slaughter, pure bloodshed and violence, brought the blood god great joy. He opened his maw wide, bestowing blessings upon the land of slaughter. Thus, within the 2 battle moons, slaughter spread like a plague, offering a more savage performance to the blood god. Within the affected area, only the Custodes and Doom Slayers remained unaffected. Their wills were too firm, the eruption of a mere bloodthirster was insufficient to sway them. These weapons should be used sparingly, Odysseus warned via comms, looking at the ecological city. Below, it had devolved into a hellish scene. Slaughter was everywhere, with every creature killing for the sake of killing. With the excessive slaughter and flowing blood, the artificial river became a river of blood, and even corn demons began to appear. But as soon as a demon looked up and saw the Doom Slayers flying in the sky, it immediately submerged into the river of blood and vanished. If not for the urgent situation and the enemies being Xenos, the Gene Father would never use these filthy things, Cabril explained. He knew all too well the power of demonic weapons. You understand the dangers, you must safeguard these weapons, Odysseus expressed another concern, ensure they never appear in human wars. We naturally understand, Cabril nodded solemnly. The demonic armory was heavily guarded, with numerous automated weapons on the outside and Doom Slayers and Psyker Masters inside. Even at the last moment, the armory's dimensional existence would collapse, sending it into another dimension. Even the exact location of the armory was known to few on the Royal Majesty, making a leak impossible. Without interference, the boarding party advanced unimpeded, landing deep within the city. Set the second bomb, Cabril gestured to his brothers to set the Nurgle bomb, completing their final mission. The Nurgle bomb's detonation would destroy the entire battle moon. Is it safe? Captain Odysseus asked. The previous demonic weapon had left a deep impression on him. The Morse solar system will surely be rebuilt after the war, this weapon must have no lasting effects. Absolutely no lasting effects, Cabril brought up a data projection, the corrosive energy will fully decay after detonation, with no residue whatsoever. That's good, long-term contamination must be prevented. Odysseus nodded, he was very concerned about lingering effects. The power of demonic weapons lay not just in their immediate impact, but in their lingering poison for future generations. If not cleansed, the effects of the previous slaughter could spread throughout the entire star system. Deployment complete, the bomb will detonate in 30 seconds. The Doom Slayer set the timer, and the two Nurgle bombs would detonate simultaneously. Custodes, we can leave now. Cabril activated his teleportation lasso, making the most direct gesture. As one of the mission leaders, he had to set an example. The teleportation light immediately flared, and Cabril vanished before everyone, returning to the scout ship's teleportation point. Odysseus nodded, taking a deep look at the cloth-covered canister, then activated his teleportation lasso and departed. As large swaths of teleportation light flared, all the Custodes left the battle moon. The last Doom Slayer walked forward silently, pulling off the black cloth to reveal the great unclean one within. Behave, he warned the demon, if you aren't detonated, the next time I summon you, I will personally kill you. The great unclean one's rotten flesh jiggled, its body shivered, and its corpulent form trembled as it barely managed to raise a putrid forelimb in submission. I will absolutely obey orders. The Doom Slayer was noncommittal, opening his teleportation lasso with 5 seconds left on the countdown. The great unclean one opened its wide maw, every pustule on its body leaping with joy, and maggots wriggled excitedly, may we never meet again. HMPH, the Doom Slayer sneered, returning to the scout ship. Watching the Doom Slayer leave, the great unclean one slumped in the canister, letting out its happiest laugh, it could finally return to the embrace of its benevolent father. Ha! 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 It spread its arms, and Rune spewed green lightning, absorbing demonic power. The great unclean one's form was shrinking, eager to fulfill its mission. Come, come. Finally, a sickly green sphere floated within the canister, glowing brightly with the runes. Buzz. The demon's eruption was silent. A sickly green circular shockwave burst forth, the great unclean one's power destined to end the battle moon. Unlike the penetrating blast of the bloodthirster, the great unclean one's effect was an integration. Nurgle's demonic essence erupted, then fused with the steel and bones of the battle moon. Time magic combined with Nurgle's corruption, wherever the sickly green shockwave spread, the battle moon underwent terrifying changes. Nurgle, sitting in his garden, looked up in surprise, the ladle stirring his cauldron briefly pausing as he patted his belly with a pleased expression. How interesting. The god of corruption exhaled a cloud of foul air, reclaiming the great unclean one. The joyous laughter in Nurgle's garden was ceaseless, happy Nurglelings watching their benevolent father's actions. The great unclean one, just returned from the real universe, saw himself appear before his benevolent father and was so moved that tears streamed down his face, crying like a child. Nurgle scooped a ladle of broth from the cauldron and put it into its mouth, saying in a swollen, benevolent voice, "You have a new name, Rustblight." The demonic weapon's detonation had given Nurgle inspiration, creating an entirely new Great Unclean One. Representing the end of steel as time passed. Drinking the benevolent Father's gift, the Great Unclean One's body swelled dramatically, its sickly green color changing to the yellow rust of oxidized steel. In its hand appeared a rusty pipe wrench, its exclusive weapon. The great demon was countless times more powerful, no longer an obscure entity, but a true great demon personally named by the benevolent Father. Beloved Father, Rustblight bowed its head, feeling the benevolent Father's loving caress. Do you wish for revenge? Nurgle smiled warmly, proud of the birth of the new plague. No, no, no. Rustblight said no 3 times, trembling and leaning against Nurgle's body. I don't want revenge. Even with its new metamorphosis, Rustblight still dared not seek revenge against the Doomslayer. My child, you have attained enlightenment. Nurgle did not reprimand the great demon's cowardice. Instead, he smiled even more benevolently, his swollen hand continuously stroking Rustblight's head. After the trial, you understood the preciousness of life, and that makes me very pleased. To be alive, how wonderful. Rustblight's rusty yellow pus tears streamed down, as it reformed itself anew as a demon. In Nurgle's garden, a scene of filial piety unfolded, with demons laughing joyously, but in the real universe, the battle moon presented a different scene. Time magic propelled Nurgle's corruption, decaying and killing all objects it touched, reducing them to dust. The bio-armor gradually aged, its functions going offline, heading towards an inevitable decline amidst the slaughter. 0 comments 0 vote. RANGNDONE. The battle moon was aging, its steel surface cracking with corrupt rust patterns, spreading like festering skin. The core arrays of the artificial intelligence collapsed one after another, and the logic circuits fell into a delirious frenzy. As if 1,000 years passed in an instant, the battle moon fell silent, its steel bones eroded by time. From orbit, the lunar surface faded from lead gray to putrid yellow, finally becoming a festering black. The 2 battle moons disintegrated under the supernatural virus catalyzed by time, reaching the end of all matter, entropy, in just a few minutes. Hiss. Russ, seeing this scene, gasped. His brother seemed to have used some forbidden power to defeat the Xenos. After a brief moment of surprise, Russ seized the opportunity and ordered the fleet to press forward. Wolf cubs, bite down on the Xenos fleet, don't let them escape. With the fall of the battle moon, Rangdan had no foothold left in the Morse solar system. Russ anticipated Rangdan's collapse. The enemy, with their morale broken, would surely flee, and he would never allow his prey to escape. The Space Wolves fleet became more aggressive, no longer maintaining formation, and re-engaged the Rangdan fleet. As expected, the fleet encountered no organized attacks, and Rangdan's ships began to slow down and flee. For the glory of the Legion. The Lord of the Void Sky Army roared over the comms, ordering the entire fleet to push forward and harvest Rangdan's ships. The destruction of the battle moon signified complete victory in the war. Now there was no need to hold back, the time to charge in and feast on the spoils had come, and the First Legion had to wash away its shame with honor. Free engagement, eliminate the Xenos fleet to the best of your ability. Blazkowicz's voice was unchanged, as if he were just arranging a minor matter. His attention was no longer here. When the Bloodthirster detonated, the Rangdan fleet lost its high-level command, and the fleet commanders were struggling to hold on. As demonic weapons detonated one after another, the gazes of Khorne and Nurgle descended, making Blazkowicz reflect on his actions. Demonic weapons were indeed powerful, eliminating enemies in the real universe, but they also attracted the attention of the gods. Being targeted by the gods was not a good omen. He sat on his throne in deep thought for a long time, then issued an order through the psychic link. Talasha, go to Argent Nur and deliver the orders to the Psyker Academy. Put a pause on research into demonic weapons, and instead delve into researching more effective ways to kill them. Blazkowicz felt that their approach had a problem, so he directed the Psyker Masters to shift their research focus and dispatched an envoy specifically to oversee this area. Your command will be followed. Talasha replied telepathically, immediately departing the war zone. As the battle was in its final stages, a small Argent Nur ship left, breaking away from the battlefield and entering the warp. With the urgent matter resolved, Blazkowicz refocused his attention, observing the battle's progression. The closer to success, the more vigilant one must be. Warnings of capsizing in the gutter were abundant throughout human history, they were the best teachers. The 2 battle moons were being pulled by gravity, deviating from their original orbits, and would soon plunge into the star. This was their best destination, as high temperatures were remarkably effective in eliminating Nurgle's infection. The Space Wolves and the First Legion had firmly latched onto the enemy, now feasting on the spoils of war. Argent Noor's ships joined in, prioritizing attacks on fleeing vessels to prevent the retreating warships from entering the warp. In space, Rangdan warships continuously sank, and the battle devolved into a slaughter. The battle in the Morse solar system was over. The elite Rangdan soldiers on the ground were merely fish on a chopping block, awaiting the human side's knife. Inside Autumn's command center, Grand Master Urian, clad in black armor, stood solemnly before his cousin. Before the general offensive, he had personally arrived aboard a Stormhawk, solely to obtain a certain authority. Autumn, my battle brother. Urian's face held a plea, and he bowed deeply to him, his voice incredibly low. Autumn quickly stepped forward, supporting Grand Master Urian, and looked at the Lord of the Legion behind him. Almost all high-ranking officers of the First Legion on the ground had arrived. He had some suspicions but dared not make a rash judgment, so he asked them, "What is this about?" "Brother, I beg you." Urian did not straighten up, remaining bent at the waist, as did the warriors behind him, grant the First Legion's humble request. The Grand Master resolutely refused to straighten his body, afraid to face his cousin's expressions. "Please speak." Autumn felt the Grand Master's persistence and dared not pull him by force, so he could only let him state his request. "We are the First Legion, and we crave vengeance." Urian's tone changed, tinged with sadness. "On this planet, the First Legion lost nearly 10,000 brothers. But we crave vengeance, to wash away this shame with the lives of the Xenos. Brother, such a request is too much, asking you to give up the honor before you." Grand Master Urian slowly straightened up a bit and looked up, his face filled only with earnestness. "But in my entire life, I have never begged anyone. I only ask you." His tone was sincere, and he suddenly knelt on one knee. "Allow the First Legion the chance to wash away its shame, let us avenge our fallen brothers." Autumn quickly stepped forward, extending his powerful arm, catching Urian before he could fully kneel. The servo joints suddenly locked, and the power armor groaned metallically under Autumn's restraint. The kneeling posture abruptly halted. "There is no need for this." Autumn exerted force with his arm, pulling Urian up with irresistible strength. "Do you know how much sacrifice that would entail? Orbital bombardment of the Hive City, followed by ground forces to eradicate the Xenos' presence, that is the safest plan. With Xenos entrenched in the Hive City, the judicious use of macrocannons and lance weapons was the optimal solution." "Brother." Autumn called the Grand Master, his eyes reflecting an unshakable resolve. "I must be responsible for everyone, for the Primarch. Tens of thousands of elite Xenos warriors, even if their condition is poor, their strength is not much inferior to an Astartes. I must be responsible for you, for the First Legion, and for the mortal legions. This is a battlefield, not a hall of honor. Eliminating the enemy is the top priority." Autumn earnestly and deeply advised the Grand Master, making him understand his difficulties. Urian was surprised by the strength his brother exerted, and then Autumn's words echoed in his ears, his emotions genuine without a hint of falsehood. He naturally knew that Autumn's approach was the most rational and efficient. The various reasons in his words allowed no room for rebuttal. As a commander, the head of an army, and his cousin clad in gleaming black and gold armor, his actions, always prioritizing duty and devoid of personal emotion, were admirable. Urian stood upright, silent for a long time, while the lords of the heavenly host behind him looked at the Grand Master with complex expressions. Would he return empty-handed? He asked himself inwardly. "How about this?" Autumn, seeing his downcast mood, proposed a compromise. "You will carry out the orbital strike, and the first wave of assault will be given to the First Legion. This is my greatest concession. This matter is not about honor, but solely about achieving victory in battle." With that, he looked at the First Legion Grand Master, Urian Bendigray. "I agree." Urian nodded in agreement. Though this arrangement was far from his initial expectation, it was the best possible outcome. Although they could not personally slay all enemies and deliver destruction to the Xenos themselves, the souls of their Legion brothers would find peace. "Thank you for your generosity, Brother Autumn." Urian put on his black helmet and bowed again. "There is no need for that, you need to act quickly." Autumn helped the Grand Master up, urging them to depart swiftly. Urian nodded, leading the high-ranking Legion officers behind him to withdraw, then boarded a Stormhawk to head to their positions. A First Legion destroyer was detached, hovering above the Hive City, adjusting its posture to face the planet with its broadside, preparing to use orbital strikes to eliminate the Xenos. Brothers. Urian stood on the back of a transport ship, at the highest point, shouting over the comms channel. Below him stood 3 phalanxes. Of the 40,000 Astartes who landed on Morse world, 30,000 remained. Turn left. At Urian's command, the 1st Legion warriors uniformly turned, facing the towering hive city. Our hatred is surging, the Grand Master cried out hoarsely. It needs to be cleansed with the fiercest firepower. The Xenos shamed the Legion, killing our Legion brothers. After the bombardment, we will charge into the city and offer their lives as a sacrifice for our brothers. Vengeance. The warriors of the 1st Legion cheered, eager to slaughter the Xenos for revenge. Witness the coming of the fire of vengeance. Urian raised his arm, and lance beams from the void ship shot down, striking the hive city. The 30,000 space marines remained expressionless, the orangered lance beams reflecting on their black armor, as if the fire of vengeance burned brightly. The towering hive city, vulnerable without its shields, was reduced to dust under the lance beams. Heaven's wrath, a term born in humanity's ignorant age, initially a trembling prostration before nature. Until the rise of religion, it transformed into the punishing whip of the divine, lashing all who were disrespectful. Later, as religion flourished, heaven's wrath became God's punishment for humans, eliminating all who were impious. Now, heaven's wrath was imminent. It was not exclusive to the gods, but descended from a battleship crafted by humans. Lances of light unleashed humanity's fury, and scorching, high-temperature heavenly fire descended, annihilating everything the Legion hated. The 1st Legion's battleship brought down judgment from the heavens, burning the Rangdan Legion with scorching fury. Amidst the flashing light, the shadow of the hive city gradually fell. A city built over dozens, even hundreds, of generations collapsed in an instant, gradually vaporizing under the lance of light strikes. On the outer perimeter of the Imperial front line, shields gradually lit up, blocking high-temperature radiation and heatwave impacts. The bloodmid swamp in front of the line rapidly evaporated under the high temperature, and the congealed blood clots mixed with the soil, becoming dry, dark brown land. The lances of light continued to bombard, melting the entire steel hive city, and the overflowing heat vitrified the surrounding area of the hive city. The hive city had no shield protection, any orbital strike against it was enough to destroy it. When the light dissipated, the Imperial Auxiliary Army opened their eyes, and a mushroom cloud rose from the ruins of the hive city. In the distance, tree branches swayed, their tips bending towards the hive city. This was a natural phenomenon. The lances of light had torn open the atmosphere, and the atmosphere returned after the shockwave dispersed. None of this could shake the Space Marines. They stood their ground, watching the Rangdan be destroyed by the fire of vengeance. Grand Master Urian stood atop the landing craft, a cold sneer playing on his lips, and a chilling glint flashed in his eyes. As far as his gaze reached, where the hive city spires had collapsed, a layer of shield light flickered within. Images were transmitted from the Grand Master's helmet display. According to scans from high-orbit ships, over 20,000 Rangdan warriors remained within the hive city. The shield erected by war machines protected the lower structures of the hive city, as well as the Rangdan and their mortal slaves. The Rangdan were now like turtles in a jar, trapped beasts awaiting their fate of death. Artillery attack, Grand Master Urian commanded coldly, ordering artillery to attack the Rangdan. He craved revenge, but he was not a foolish man. The Rangdan Xenos were now determined to die, their remaining warriors preparing for a desperate struggle. If the Legion warriors charged in now, the Xeno counterattack would cause greater losses. Continuing the artillery attack was meant to wear down the Xenos' will, to shatter their resolve to die, transforming their suicidal determination into tragic despair. The 1st Legion's vengeance would utterly destroy the Rangdan's inner spirit, comforting the souls of their brothers with the Xenos' despairing souls. Artillery shells whistled past the Legion's formation, as if carrying the hatred of the Legion warriors, smashing into the Rangdan's final positions like iron fists. One after another, the translucent shields were rippled by the shells, consuming their last energy. The Rangdan warriors, who had been waiting for the enemy's charge, then realized that they were merely playthings in the hands of humans. Their lives were not their own, they could only be slaughtered by humans. Despair and bewilderment spread, and the mentally sensitive Rangdan felt their kin spirits collapsing. Firm resolve was gradually infected, as shells struck at their mental barriers, shattering their courage bit by bit. Finally, from the cracks in their shattered courage, only fear was revealed. Grand Master Urian ignited his power sword, and with a hammer in one hand, he cried out, "Legion warriors! Avenge our fallen brothers! Revenge!" The Legion warriors raised their arms and roared a sky-shaking cry of vengeance. The first Legion warriors set off, their black armored boots treading upon the blood-soaked earth, sprinting at a steady pace towards the hive city. The black armored warriors were like a black tide, their momentum fierce, yet they watched out for each other. The final battle did not make the First Legion lose their minds. Rhino armored personnel carriers, Predator tanks, Storm Eagles, and other ground or aerial vehicles served as points of attack in the formation. The black armored warriors advanced, moving under the cover of artillery fire. The First Legion, the most powerful Astartes Legion, bore their battle-hardened black armor as their symbol. They were determined to eliminate the Rangdan Xenos with cruel methods. As the First Legion began to advance, the newer auxiliary army naturally made their move. The auxiliary army went to full armament. Immortal sergeants led the legion forward, launching an attack on the hive city. Meanwhile, the mortal titans in the defensive line aimed their weapons at the wilderness, and their left-arm composite cannons began to charge. At the final moment, the First Legion went to the hive city to encircle and annihilate the Rangdan, while the newer auxiliary army was divided into two parts. Autumn issued commands from the command center. 50,000 men will form the Siege Legion. The Sentinels and the Siege Army will act together. 10 Doom Slayer brothers will follow, ready to reinforce the Mortal Legion at any time. The remaining forces will defend against the onslaught of the Rangdan slave army, defending against their final madness. The Supreme Commander's orders were brief. The remaining detailed tasks were left to the Mortal Legion commanders of each legion to decide. Autumn's decision was executed. He represented Blaskowitz, the Supreme Primarch, King Noak of Argent Noor. He clearly understood what the Mortal Legion needed. The Noor auxiliary army's military technology far surpassed that of the Imperial side, but this made training even more necessary. All Siege Legion armaments unlocked, Autumn hesitated for a moment, then allowed the Mortal auxiliary army to go all out. After all, they were facing Rangdan elites comparable to Astartes, not ordinary mortal armies. Such terrifying enemies did not constitute asymmetric warfare. It would not reduce the combat power of the troops, and there was no need to worry too much. Under the Supreme Command's authorization, all power armor functions came online, and the Mortal Auxiliary Army would go all out, flanking the Hive City from the side. 50,000 mortal soldiers stepped forward. They quickly assembled, emerged from the defensive line, and began siege operations. Accompanying them were 4 times their number of automated combat units. Mortals had limited attention. After strict training, they could still coordinate with 2 automated combat units, with the other 2 kept as backups. A small number of mortals, coordinating with 3 to 4 automated combat units, were considered exceptionally gifted. The Black-Gray Argent Noor Mortal Legion, driving armored vehicles, advanced towards the Hive City. Wearing mortal power armor, the Noor Auxiliary Army was not afraid of long-distance assaults. A distance of 10-odd kilometers was easily covered by them. As the Legion advanced, they maintained a steady pace with the First Legion, ensuring both sides arrived at the Hive City battlefield simultaneously. Autumn watched the auxiliary army depart, then returned his gaze to the map. He kept shaking his head. The Rangdan slaves in the wilderness were surrounding them from all directions, attempting a final desperate act. Unfortunately, after prolonged combat, the Rangdan slaves were already weak and exhausted. These humans lacked supplies and had declined during the long siege. Non-combat attrition exceeded combat casualties. Before the general offensive, cannibalism had already appeared among the Rangdan slaves. The slave army devoured each other, scavenged the dead from the battlefield, and eating infants and women was commonplace. Help them find release. Autumn sighed deeply. He was not being sentimental, but helping his human compatriots find release. Behind the Argent Noor base, 10 10-tube missile launchers raised their launch racks, aiming in different directions. Each launch tube contained a large-yield nuclear warhead. 100-odd nuclear warheads were enough to destroy all slave forces. The Rangdan's attrition tactics had no effect whatsoever against a well-prepared regular army. 100 nuclear missiles ascended with their tail flames, scattering like celestial maidens to various locations, heading to the most suitable detonation points. The nuclear bombs detonated simultaneously, their intense light tearing through the clouds, and the world momentarily turned white. From the surroundings, the human base appeared to be nestled in a giant mushroom forest, giving it a somewhat fantastical feel. The tremors from the nuclear explosions continuously reverberated across the ground. The entire world beneath their feet was shaking. Autumn's expression was normal. The holographic image showed that 99.99% of the wilderness servant armies had been eliminated. After the nuclear blast impact dissipates, send out cavalry to eliminate the remaining enemies, he ordered coldly again, staring at the damage figures. Atomic weapons, after tens of thousands of years of development, were powerful and inexpensive, and radiation was suppressed within safe thresholds, allowing troops to be confidently sent in for mopping up. And urged by the nuclear blast, the First Legion breached the city walls and charged into the xeno-infested Hive City. Here, ruins were everywhere, and enemies were everywhere. Lolos. Grand Master Urian roared, his voice amplified by his helmet's sound array, echoing through the ruins, "Where are you?" The Grand Master was seething with rage, but there was no response. His power sword spun up and down, its blade tearing through Rangdan elite warriors, its disintegration field slaying the Rangdan entities within. Behind the Grand Master followed his guard, clad in Terminator power armor, armed with swords and shields, their arm-mounted bolt guns continuously firing, killing Xenos and mortals. Black-armored warriors poured through the breach in the city wall, pouncing on the Rangdan like hungry wolves. The Astartes, longswords were insatiably thirsty, eager to drink the Xenos' foul blood, to avenge their fallen brothers. The First Legion's assault had no mortal auxiliary army behind them. The attack of 30,000 space marines required no mortal cooperation. Lolos, you alien bastard. Urian's ceramite boot crunched over the ruins, his taunt piercing the smoke of battle. I know you're still alive, get out here and face me. The Grand Master's oculars swept across the battlefield. Though the Rangdan soldiers' formation hadn't broken, their movements betrayed a growing panic. Behind this crude disguise, the chain of command was still functioning. He sneered, the hum of his plasma pistol intertwining with the roar of bolters, creating a symphony of death. Urian's constant taunts and provocations were partly due to deep-seated hatred, and partly to force out the enemy commander. Where is your arrogance? His longsword danced, carving a Rangdan into a human stick, his ceramite boot crushing the alien's abdominal armor as he stared down into its trembling monitor. You want me to lick 10,000 boots? The Grand Master asked, feigning confusion, then roared at the alien beneath his foot. I'm here, where are you? He raised his plasma pistol at the alien, then looked up, scanning the surroundings, waiting for a response. On the battlefield, bolters boomed, plasma streams flowed with searing heat, the terrifying shrieks of the Rangdan, and the furious roars of the Legion warriors all mingled together. Deep within the ruins, in a makeshift command center, the Rangdan Warmaster, Lolos, was seething, you human dog relying on others' power. Lolos shrieked in crude human language, interspersed with clumsy idioms, its venomous voice echoing through the command center. Through its bionic eyes, it saw the enemy commander and heard the humans' provocations. The Warmaster dared not respond, its bio-armor fuming, swallowing the public humiliation alone. Lolos knew the enemy wanted to force it out and completely destroy its chain of command. Before inflicting more human casualties, it absolutely could not go out, it had to maintain its composure. With the defeat of the space fleet and no results from the underground sneak attack, Lolos knew it had nowhere to escape. Its elite warriors would eventually be tortured in the siege until death. It forced itself to calm down and command until the very last moment. Ultimately, a vile alien. After a long silence without a response, Urian shook his head sadly, utterly devoid of courage and dignity, not even comparable to those slaves fighting for their lives. He prepared to pull the trigger, to pierce the Rangdan bio-armor with plasma, vaporizing the ugly, brain-like Rangdan. No need to rush. At that moment, the Rangdan beneath his foot spoke, but it was Lolos' voice. I will make you lick boots. Oh. The Grand Master turned his voice to maximum volume, still hiding behind your kin and boasting. After the humiliation and questioning, Urian gave no chance for rebuttal, pulling the trigger and killing the Rangdan. The subtle effects of psychological warfare often determine many things. Within the Rangdan lines, morale continued to collapse, and many doubts began to arise. Doubts about the Warmaster's courage, doubts about the resolve to die, doubts about their own strength. Facing the high-spirited First Legion, the fissures of doubt became a fatal flaw, and the Rangdan front collapsed extremely quickly. Numerous war vehicles entered, speeding through the Hive City ruins. Space Marine vehicles were connected to the pilot's power armor interface, with the nervous system assisting operation. The two merged into one through neural connection, precisely controlling the vehicle's posture and unleashing powerful combat capabilities. Legion warriors guarded the perimeter, using the vehicle's powerful scanning instruments to clear the surrounding environment. Using vehicles as strongpoints, they established regional firepower superiority, sweeping away Rangdan elite warriors in a net-like fashion. The 1st Legion, proficient in various tactics, advanced steadily, relying on infantry-tank coordination to compress the Rangdan's living space. Compared to the 1st Legion, Argent Noor's advance was slow. Troops poured through the gap torn by the sonic cannon, their tactical movements a textbook example. They established strongpoints at the hubs of the complex Hive City, advancing in coordination with automated combat mechs. 2 automated combat mechs were positioned 2 meters in front of each warrior, synchronizing information with the soldier's power armor. Argent Noor's mortal power armor connected to the wearer's spinal interface, making it a neurosynaptic power armor. While its defense was not as strong as Space Marine power armor, it had the advantage of being wearable by mortals and possessing many combat functions. Mortals formed groups of 3, carrying 6 automated combat mechs, and 3 such groups formed a squad, providing mutual cover from various angles. Vanguard Squad, advance. A signal came through the power armor, and the squad commander ordered the vanguard to move forward and seize the upcoming intersection. Vanguard Squad acknowledged. The vanguard squad immediately moved forward to seize the advantageous position. Enemy detected. Inside the power armor helmet, the enemy's position was immediately marked and shared with the entire squad. Within the buildings along the street, slave troops had set up concealed firing points, waiting for their prey to walk in and be annihilated. Their presence did not escape the automated combat mechs, biological scans. Cover. The vanguard squad made hand gestures, concealing themselves while having the automated combat mechs provide cover. Beware of Rangdan elite soldiers, they might be nearby. The captain retrieved information, his mind clear, completely unaffected by the gunfire around him. As the troops advanced, more and more Rangdan intelligence was transmitted. Initially, they showed great contempt for mortals, charging directly at mortal troops. After a brief engagement, the automated combat mechs, firepower shredded the arrogant Rangdan, and then the aliens hid in the shadows. The aliens' bio-armor was very strong, adjusting its temperature to blend with the environment, and even providing a degree of visual invisibility. They would suddenly burst from the shadows, relying on personal shields and agile movements, causing many casualties. The Mortal Legion were not sentinels, nor space marines, their reaction speed could not keep up with the aliens. The Siege Legion immediately changed tactics, referencing the war codes written by King Noak, and engaged the aliens in urban warfare. You conduct guerrilla warfare. I advance steadily. Search every point, establish a stable rear, and begin the true confrontation. Automated combat mechs, spread out, adopt, cover formation, to avoid being quickly killed by aliens at close range. The captain was giving orders, but he felt very uneasy. This street was too narrow, making it difficult for the squad to spread out, and the automated combat mechs were too close together. Just as the automated combat mechs were spreading out, sensors transmitted an urgent warning. 2 piles of rubble at the intersection suddenly began to move, dropping their disguise and revealing their true forms. Enemy confirmed. Rangdan Overlord, Rangdan Elite. The automated combat mechs transmitted information incredibly fast. Before the humans could even react, they sent the signal. Not only that, their various mounted weapons quickly adjusted and aimed at the targets. The Rangdan Overlord and Elite, with their multi-jointed biolimbs, struck like lightning, launching a sudden attack. After a brief skirmish, the Rangdan also knew, they absolutely could not let the machines and humans spread out and establish a net of fire. The various weapons mounted on those automated attack machines could instantly shred bio-armor under concentrated fire. The Rangdan Overlord moved extremely fast, launching a fierce counterattack before the machines could even aim. Screech. The face on the bio-armor's abdomen emitted a sonic roar, first incapacitating the humans. The Argent Noor soldiers swayed. The Rangdan Overlord's sonic attack caused them to briefly lose focus. With a successful strike, the Rangdan Overlord propelled its omnidirectional legs, rapidly moving away from its original position, and the Elite immediately followed its movements. They had to be fast. The machines had already aimed within half a second and had opened fire. Crimson lasers flashed, hitting where the Rangdan had been, burning a molten crater into the ground. A moment later, the machines' high-power lasers would have hit them. Bionic arms raised, the Rangdan fired in coordination, plasma guns instantly killing 2 nearby automated combat mechs. Compared to the slow-reacting humans, the machines posed a greater threat. After a flash of lightning, the captain reacted, calmly issuing orders, eliminate the Rangdan Elite. the Overlord is beyond our capability to contend with. The captain was far away, so the sonic impact on him was minimal, but the mortals couldn't react to the Rangdan's movements. The instant he gave the order, the Rangdan's curved blade fell ruthlessly, slaying the vanguard squad. Ignoring everything else, all remaining personnel began to act. 8 automated combat mechs began to move, unleashing a dense barrage of fire, forcing back the Rangdan overlord. During this process, 2 more mechs were lost, and all remaining humans and mechs opened fire on the Rangdan elite. The elite warrior was not as decisive as the humans, it tried to retreat but it was too late. The automated combat mechs, lasers locked it down, and several large-caliber plasma bursts struck its shield, shattering its defenses. In the distance, 4 more automated combat mechs were destroyed, the Rangdan overlord was too fast. The 3 captains raised their electromagnetic rifles, automatically locking onto their target, the nearby Rangdan elite warrior. The overlord was in another charge, raising its butcher's blade towards another squad. Die. You filthy alien. With immense resolve, he pulled the trigger, the electromagnetic hum crackling, instantly firing hundreds of rounds. With automatic targeting locked, the programmed ammunition could track within a small range, and all 100 rounds hit their mark. The elite warrior's bio-armor was instantly shredded, and the Rangdan's true form burst from its armor, looking terrified and attempting to flee. Unfortunately, the dense barrage of fire splattered it. Before the auxiliary army could react to the psychic shock, the Rangdan overlord, filled with rage, charged forward, seeking to avenge its kin with slaughter. Just as its butcher's blade was about to fall, a blue light flashed, forcing the Rangdan overlord back. Filthy Xeno, your opponent is me. Deep in the street, a sentinel stood there, holding a spear. The sentinel stood in the street, surrounded by scattered rocks and twisted steel. He was a veteran, clad in steel-colored power armor, wielding a dimensional spear. Your opponent is me, he growled, his deep voice echoing through the street in the smoke of battle as his spear twirled between his fingers, performing a flourish, you alien scum. The automaton detected the Rangdan overlord, determined it could not contend, and immediately called for heightier combat support from nearby forces. Before the squad was completely wiped out, the sentinels, reinforcements arrived. The tall warrior who came as reinforcement made the Rangdan overlord feel a sense of pressure. That human was a few inches taller than a space marine, and the power armor he wore possessed a strange beauty, both ancient and advanced. He held a glowing spear, completely devoid of tension, as if taking a leisurely stroll through a shattered garden. Who are you? The Rangdan overlord asked, a ripple of unease emanating from the folds of its brain-like main body. Although its bio-armor detected no threat, its instincts screamed a warning, the human before it was far from simple. It obeyed its inner instincts, maximizing its bionic vision system and locking all its bionic systems onto the human before it. Sentinels, the watcher before dawn, the sentinels announced, raising his spear and stepping forward, and your high-hanging Death Star. As the sentinels moved, the Rangdan overlord leapt backward like a startled toad. Inside its bio-armor, the overlord secreted a large amount of cerebral fluid, its mind stretched to its absolute limit. In its psychic perception, the sentinel's emotions were as calm as still water, yet as heavy as iron. The moment he took a step, while his mental state remained unchanged, his sense of biological crisis surged dramatically. Its biopower armor heaved violently, as if bearing an invisible pressure for its operator. Ultimately, a cowardly alien driven by instinct, the sentinel said, shaking his head, his deep voice as calm as an ancient well, filled with profound disdain. He strode closer, simultaneously raising a hand and roaring, "Auxiliary army, withdraw." The newer auxiliary army's expressions relaxed, the arrival of their equivalent combat power meant they had a chance to survive. No one disliked surviving, even with the courage to die, the joy of having hope to live was real. The scene was not for them to handle, a Rangdan overlord was an existence beyond the reach of mortals. The squad leader helped up the surviving teammates, took the usable automatons, and withdrew to the side. The deeply disdained Rangdan overlord, seeing the human remnants about to leave, was enraged and made to pursue them. I advise you not to have any ideas about them. Before its omnidirectional legs could move, the Rangdan overlord heard the chilling voice again. Its bio-armor froze in place, the overlord decided not to move rashly. I'm just narrowing my focus, concentrating on the human warrior, the Rangdan told itself deep inside, trying to reassure itself. The Rangdan, who prided itself on being a race superior to humans, would never admit to feeling fear towards a human before even engaging in combat. While the human soldiers withdrew, it dropped its plasma gun and walked to its elite warrior to pick up a melee weapon. This time, the Sentinels did not stop the alien's actions, watching it silently, waiting for the auxiliary army to withdraw. The Rangdan overlord activated its disintegration field, and two bone scimitars in its hands glowed with an electric radiance. It seemed the weapons gave it strength. When it looked at the Sentinels again, its psychic power was filled with killing intent. Ka! Another terrifying roar sounded. Visible sonic attacks swept through, whipping up the mottled old flags hanging in the street. The overlord abdomen vibrated, unleashing an air-rending shriek. The sound wave crushed through the street, rusted steel beams cracked and collapsed, and gravel shot out like bullets, yet the Sentinels did not move an inch. A veteran Sentinels, a seasoned veteran who survived the Truth War, his heart was as firm as a rock, and his soul was unimaginably resilient. The overlord's intimidating roar did not even make him raise an eyebrow. But the Sentinels did not underestimate it, still summoning all his psychic power to defend against the alien's bizarre neural attack. Even when he was an academy student, facing any opponent with full effort, the teachings of the War College were deeply ingrained. Weak and powerless, the Sentinels said as the mortals moved away, his spear resting in his hand, and he fired a dimensional ray at the alien. The lightspeed dimensional ray, combined with the Sentinels' reaction speed, left the Rangdan overlord no time to dodge. Despicable human. The overlord's psychic fluctuations roared, as one of its omnidirectional legs was severed by the lightspeed weapon. It had just abandoned its ranged weapon, originally thinking the human wanted an honorable duel. Its remaining omnidirectional legs fully extended, the Rangdan overlord desperately closed the distance between them, avoiding being hit by ranged fire. That weapon was too strange. Shields had no effect whatsoever, instantly severing the attacked part. Instead of running, you're actively approaching me. The Sentinels retorted, his gaze locked on the Rangdan overlord. The alien's mobility was astonishing. Its omnidirectional legs scaled the buildings along the street, crawling like a spider on the walls. Its movements were swift, performing super high-speed maneuvers, and its evasive actions were fluid. The Sentinels raised his spear. He could have accurately hit the alien, but after some thought, he decided against firing. He brought his spear across his body, adopting a defensive stance, waiting for close-quarters combat with the alien. The Sentinels was a professional warrior, well-versed in various military strategies and tactics. The end of a battle was merely the prelude to war. The Sentinels knew that the true slaughter had not yet arrived. Even if the enemy before him was slain, the coordinates of the Rangdan homeworld, the Imperium of man's territory, still remained a mist shrouding humanity. Regarding all this information, the Imperium of Man knew very little about the Rangdan, while the Rangdan knew a great deal about the Imperium of Man. The Rangdan overlord before him was the first overlord the Noor auxiliary army had encountered, and the Sentinels wanted to gather more intelligence to prepare for the next war. Human, die. The Rangdan overlord shrieked psychically, leaping down from the air the moment it made its decision. It raised its bone blades high, with the crushing force of splitting a mountain, using the falling momentum to cleave the human in half. This move was powerful and heavy, yet in the Sentinel's eyes, it had 10,000 flaws. Its guard was wide open, its lower limbs and chest, abdomen undefended. One spear thrust could kill the alien. Even doing nothing, just holding up the spear, the alien could impale itself on it. The Sentinel shook his head internally. He held his spear horizontally, using the shaft to block the alien's downward strike. Clang! The bone spear collided with the spear shaft, producing a clear, melodious sound, crisp and pleasant, while the move instantly changed. The specially treated spear blocked the disintegration field. The Sentinel's right hand pulled down and instantly released. The spear butt hit the ground, and the alien's bone blade slid down, crashing to the ground and splitting the bluestone pavement. The Rangdan overlord ferocity surged again, its blade poised for a horizontal sweep, but the two bone blades were blocked by the spear shaft at close range, making it impossible to exert force again. Failing to land a blow, it once again activated its omnidirectional legs, moving to the optimal close combat distance, swiftly attacking the spear with its blades to prevent the long weapon from being effectively wielded. The Rangdan overlord decision was correct. The two bone blades spun with formidable power, surrounded by lightning flashes, constantly slashing at the human before it. Clanging sounds rang out, millimeter-precise blade movements stirring up a strong gust of wind around the battle, the blades carrying an astonishing force with the wind. I understand, the Sentinel sighed after another collision, his spear vibrating to knock away the Rangdan's twin blades. The Rangdan leapt backward, moving to a suitable distance, a distance from which it could quickly attack and prevent the humans' ranged attacks. Its bio-armor was breathing. A high-intensity attack required the bio-armor's temperature to be relieved. What do you understand? The Overlord asked eagerly. During the rapid assault just now, each of its full-power attacks was easily neutralized by the human warrior. After a round of sparring, its mind was exhausted, and its bio-armor needed rest. Yet, the human warrior who had endured the attacks appeared completely relaxed, showing no signs of fatigue. I understand the lowliness of aliens, devoid of any martial prowess, the sentinel said, shaking his head, the disdain in his words completely undisguised. After a short period of high-intensity combat, the sentinels discovered that while the aliens' attacks appeared extremely fierce, they actually lacked any technique, relying entirely on the bio-armor's high performance to overpower its opponent. This fighting style, when encountering creatures whose functions were inferior to the Rangdan, naturally resulted in a one-sided crushing defeat. However, if it encountered a warrior of the same caliber, such as a space marine, after several rounds of one-on-one combat, it would be killed by a skilled warrior. Martial prowess. The Rangdan overlord thought it had misheard, or that the human before it had misspoken. It reperceived, its neural tentacles extending from its body, feeling an endless stream of power emanating from its bio-armor. What else could this be but martial prowess? I have learned of your race's fragility, you may die now. The sentinel spoke in a calm tone, as if discussing something unrelated to the life or death struggle at hand. He lowered his body, adopting a stance, holding his spear horizontally in front of him with his right hand, and extended his left hand to the Rangdan in a challenging gesture, come and die. Seeing the human's provocative action and his extremely arrogant words, what consideration for martial prowess did the Rangdan have? It furiously brandished its bone blades, screeching to display its power, absolutely unwilling to be underestimated by a human. The Xenos charged forward, gnashing its teeth and brandishing its claws, and the sentinel shook his head regretfully. In his eyes, there was a savage beast wielding a sharp blade, flaunting its power, yet it was all bluster, lacking the inherent restraint and gravitas that true power should possess. The sentinel's eyes narrowed, scrutinizing every flaw of the Rangdan, and his spear launched an attack. Say hello to death for me. With that greeting, the watch extended his right hand to block the Rangdan's cleaving bone blade, and his left hand moved so fast it was a blur. The Rangdan's heart tightened abruptly, a chill carrying the scent of death erupting from the depths of its soul. Its bio-armor's bionic eye caught a subtle movement from the human. What was his left hand doing? The sentinels alone could not block the Rangdan's cleave with one hand, but only a momentary release of force, a brief instant, was enough. His left hand had already drawn a pistol from his waist, the muzzle slightly raised, aimed at the Rangdan's main body. Through its bionic eye, the Rangdan zoomed in on the image. The gun barrel, rising from his waist, seemed to move as slowly as congealed amber in its perception, yet it was destined to be unavoidable. I am your harbinger of death. With this declaration of death, the sentinels pulled the trigger. A cross-shaped beam erupted from the muzzle. The cutting pistol, containing null crystal, severed the bio-armor at light speed, cutting through the Rangdan overlord within. The bio-armor lost control, its power gradually fading. The sentinels did not dare to be careless. He retreated out of attack range, his left-hand pistol firing continuously. He fired several more shots into the cockpit, confirming the Rangdan overlord was dead. He shot at the bio-armor's joints, severing threatening limbs. He silently completed everything, tallying the Rangdan's various weapons, which were actually quite threatening. The Rangdan's flaws were obvious, their bio-armor was powerful, but it was always an external object outside their body. In the Xenos combat system, there was only numerical superiority brought by function, not the corresponding martial arts techniques. In the previous battle, if the Rangdan overlord had superior skill, using ranged weapons for threat, melee weapons for primary attack, and the bionic tentacle blades behind for harassment, it might have lasted a few more seconds. Unfortunately, the Xenos' superficial techniques often led them to forget many things in combat. Behind the sentinels, the newly arrived auxiliary army squad filled the gap and continued to advance. The mortals nodded in greeting. Too much ceremony was unnecessary on the battlefield. He looked back at the mortal soldiers, then turned and left to patrol other front lines. Within seconds of the battle, the auxiliary army's follow-up forces had already arrived, moving quickly, a testament to the Legion commander's coordination. The Nur Legion advanced steadily, like a constantly moving city wall, compressing the Rangdan's living space. As the battle progressed, the mortals encountered more and more Rangdan warriors, including high-ranking units like the Rangdan Overlord. Through continuous combat, the auxiliary army gradually became familiar with the Rangdan Xenos, employing effective tactics to engage in battle. Facing elite warriors, the auxiliary army leveraged its firepower advantage, with automated combatants suppressing movement with fire, and the auxiliary army focusing fire with automatic aiming, thus gaining a fighting chance. These experiences were invaluable, summarized with lives. The advantage of Rangdan elites over mortals was almost all-encompassing, like that of a space marine over a mortal, the two were incomparable. Elite mortals were still mortals, they could not defeat superhuman soldiers in close combat. This was a fundamental difference. Before the mortal could even react, the elite warrior had completed his shot and holstered his weapon. Meanwhile, the First Legion, with 30,000 Astartes spread out across the field, pursued relentlessly, slaughtering the Rangdan in droves. When an Astartes legion assaults, no creature in the galaxy can withstand its might. No one could stand before the black-armored warriors. The Rangdan had just retreated to their defensive line when the First Legion had already arrived. Behind them, there were no survivors, only swept-clean buildings and purified Xenos contamination. The Rangdan had to face not only the attacks of the human Imperium Space Marines but also the psychic contamination emanating from them. Lolos, you coward, I've reached the outside of your defensive line, are you still not going to show yourself? Urian was still shouting. He stood beside a rhino-armored vehicle, and on top of the vehicle, a loudspeaker was installed, repeating the Grand Master's words. The Rangdan launched an initial attack, attempting to destroy the loudspeaker, but all were killed by the guarding Terminators. After continuous attacks, the First Legion charged to the perimeter of the Rangdan command post, which was also the Xenos' last line of defense. Wait, the Grand Master ordered, slowing the Legion's attack speed. Slow down the pace of attack, wear down the Xenos' strength, and we will wait for our allies here. This command was inferior. Normally, one would press on in one go, charging into the Xenos' defensive line to strike at their heart. Yet, the Legion warriors obeyed. They deliberately slowed their advance, using the ruins as cover, waiting for the Argent Nur allies to arrive. If not for the support of Argent Nur's allies, the First Legion would have suffered severe casualties, and the Grand Master might have already perished. The First Legion remembered kindness and sought to repay it. The honor of breaking the Xenos' command post should include the Nur Legion. Waiting was a form of respect. Although the Argent Nur army might not care, the First Legion needed to do this. The Rangdan were now defenseless, even if they reorganized their lines. Once the Nur Legion surrounded them, breaking through the defenses would be even easier. 100 Custodes, and Destroyer warriors, they were unstoppable. Seeing the humans slow their attack, the Rangdan indeed reorganized their lines, preparing for a final desperate struggle. Urian Bendigray. A sharp roar, mixed with a psychic shockwave, spread across the ruined position. Wearing tall bio-armor, the Rangdan Warmaster Lolos finally appeared, his anger visible to the naked eye. Are you ready to die? Urian's voice was even louder, the loudspeaker's power overwhelming the Warmaster's fury. The Grand Master jumped onto the roof of the rhino-armored vehicle, his combat boots stepping on a protrusion, and his opening words immediately seized the initiative. Are you ready to use your tentacles to wipe my boots clean? Ha! 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 The Legion warriors, in coordination with the Grand Master, burst into deafening laughter. Their morale was high, and they shamelessly mocked the Xenos. Despicable tongue. Lolos, bio-armor vents spewed hot steam, his retort drowned out by the loudspeaker's sound waves. What did you say? The Grand Master feigned listening with his ear tilted. Can't you speak louder? I didn't hear you. The Legion warriors laughed even more joyously. Today, they would get their revenge and thoroughly humiliate the Xenos. Accompanying the thunderous laughter were continuous gunshots, and on the First Legion's left flank, Rangdan soldiers were rapidly retreating. Their personal shields were overloaded, and their bio-armor showed signs of penetration. They dragged their damaged armor back in retreat. The Grand Master's gaze swept over, and what he first saw was not the Custodes, nor the Doom Slayers, but a squad of mortal auxiliary army assault troops. His cheerful expression changed, and he immediately realized that the Argent Nur's mortal auxiliary army was the main attacking force. In the operation to encircle the Xenos, the Custodes and Doom Slayers, as well as the Sentinels from the Nur stars, these high-tier combat forces were merely auxiliary. Although the advance speed of the mortal auxiliary army could not compare to the Astartes, it was considerably stronger than the Imperium of Man's auxiliary army. More mortal auxiliary army appeared in the First Legion's sight. They quickly seized positions, rapidly establishing firing points and advantageous positions. Despite the presence of superhuman warriors, the mortals maintained their military discipline, showing no slackness or sloppiness. Seeing such military bearing, the Legion warriors nodded inwardly. They were witnessing the rise of a powerful army. Only after the mortals had established their positions and moved into combat stances did the others appear from behind. A Doom Slayer held a battle standard in one hand, bearing the mark of the Gene Father. The black background with a red imprint showcased destruction and devastation. The Sentinels also held a battle standard, emblazoned with the Noor Star's insignia, a blue background with a bright yellow Noor Star's insignia. Laurels encircled a gladiolus, symbolizing unyielding spirit and victory, glory and conquest. The Custodes held high the imperial double-headed eagle banner, slowly walking to the rear of the mortal positions, looking at the Rangdan positions constructed within the collapsed ruins. A communication came through the channel. Commander Autumn's orders arrived promptly. Annihilate the filthy Xenos. Mortals, break through the defiled one's lines. A roar erupted from the Argent Noor front line, and a black-armored warrior charged out of the line, moving at terrifying speed. There were 8,000 remaining Rangdan soldiers gathered here. A breach had to be opened in their sturdy defensive line. The Doom Slayer led the charge, plunging into the enemy ranks. He wielded a double-headed dimensional greatsword, gripping the hilt in the middle. The afterimages created by the twin-bladed sword danced like a dimensional shield, devouring the Rangdan's plasma shots. I am Alistair. I am a Doom Slayer. He roared, his inner savagery bursting forth. Those suitable for the Doom Slayer soul trial often became aloof and cold in personality. But Alistair was not. He was the most ferocious warrior. There was a thunder mark on his black armor. This warrior had participated in the Unification Wars, purging the Thunder Warriors. Alistair, the sharpest berserker. Wielding a double-bladed greatsword in a blur of light, he charged forward, deflecting weapons with dimensional blades. The Rangdan panicked, focusing their fire on that black phantom, terrified he would reach them. In their psychic perception, the human roaring as he charged seemed no longer human, but a blazing inferno of rage. His fury was so real, his killing intent undisguised, piercing the Rangdan's mental world. They had to stop Alistair from getting close, daring not to face him directly, fearing their minds would be scorched by that ray of sunlight. With the Rangdan's attention drawn, the mortal auxiliary army behind John seized the opportunity. An endless stream of automated combat droids advanced, their powerful firepower suppressing the front line, instantly making the Rangdan afraid to show their heads. When the numbers surpassed a critical point, a large number of four-legged combat droids attacked, forming an impenetrable web of fire. Equipped with 4 specially designed large-caliber weapons, the automated combat droids fought alongside the infantry, providing heavy fire support. Large-caliber electromagnetic weapons, heavy supercharged lasers, incinerating rays, and plasma armor piercers. The 4 weapon types combined, their caliber expanded to the maximum the automated combat droids could carry. At a glance, the machines were half a man's height, and apart from the chassis, weapons filled all the space in their upper bodies. In an instant, the firepower unleashed on the Argent Noor front line rapidly raised the temperature of the battlefield. Various high-energy rays combined to kill Rangdan elite warriors. The Argent Noor Mortal Auxiliary Army, in complex terrain, had been ambushed and slaughtered by Rangdan warriors. Now that the Xenos were trapped within their positions, it was only natural to unleash their firepower, killing the Rangdan to avenge their fallen comrades. The firepower unleashed by the mortals astonished Urian, who shook his head inwardly, analyzing the fire density with a warrior's instinct. The Grand Master ultimately concluded that even Space Marines, if surrounded, would gain no advantage against such fire suppression. Although their reaction speed was faster, the continuous line of fire would make it impossible for Space Marines to lift their heads. Charge! Urian roared, being the first to break from the Legion's line and launch a final assault on the Rangdan. Any later and it might be too late. Alistair had plunged into the Rangdan position, his figure flitting like a phantom, each rotation of his double-bladed greatsword sliced through any Xenos in his path. That unstoppable warrior let out a wild roar, charging through the enemy lines like a beast. He roared again, abominations. Yield to me. The hilt of his double-bladed greatsword split in the middle, transforming into 2 single-handed great swords, and he began a dance of unrivaled prowess among the Rangdan. Around John were the remnants of Rangdan bioweapons, and wherever he passed, a wave of death surged, his individual might making the Rangdan tremble. With such a vanguard charging, the auxiliary army naturally followed quickly, using automated combat droids as shields, pushing forward with continuous fire suppression. In just 2 minutes, the first automated combat droid climbed onto the Rangdan position. Although it was destroyed immediately, more machines followed closely, their 4 mechanical legs marching with determined, unstoppable strides onto the position. The Rangdan resisted desperately, the firing speed of their plasma guns slowing as continuous firing caused the weapons to overheat. They experienced a despair they had once inflicted upon other races. With a massive army of slaves, they didn't need any tactics, just to overwhelm and crush the enemy's defenses. Now the Rangdan experienced despair, as cold, emotionless machines continuously pressed forward, collapsing their front line. Retreat, there was no other option but retreat. But now there was no way out. The machines, orderly advance told the Rangdan's death knell. The Sentinels and the auxiliary army advanced together. They did not charge quickly, maintaining the same speed as the mortals, providing some auxiliary assistance. The Gleaming Emperor's custodians also did not charge, distributed within the mortal lines, cooperating with the slow advance of the front. The Doom Slayers brought up the rear, holding the line to prevent any unforeseen incidents. The superhuman warriors all understood that in this battle, the mortals were the main protagonists. The mortal auxiliary army needed a great victory, to earn honor and forge a true military spirit. Even the First Legion was a bit slower, the Space Marines assisting the mortals, offensive. Only a small assault team charged towards the Rangdan command post. Urian, escorted by Terminators, held a force field shield in his left hand, charging towards the target he had been longing for. Rangdan Warmaster Lolos. In front of the Rangdan line, the Grand Master let out a thunderous roar, calling out to his opponent. Urian Bendigray. A response came from the Rangdan line. This time, Lolos answered Urian with a shriek. They called out to each other amidst the chaos of battle and found each other's traces. The moment their eyes met, their gazes clashed in the air, as if swords were striking, producing intense sparks. Warmaster Lolos, in his orangered bio-armor, was unusually tall, holding 2 bone blades, and his omnidirectional bionic legs turned, charging towards the Grand Master. Urian, in black armor, serious and silent, holding a force field shield and power armor, his boots crushing rubble, charged without hesitation towards the Xeno Warmaster. I will have you buried with me. Lolos shrieked mournfully, sweeping his 2 bone blades to the right, poised to decapitate the Grand Master. Urian ducked, evading the sweep, then slid to Lolos' left, thrusting his power sword, buried with a foul creature like you. I have no such interest. The power sword's disintegrating field flickered, piercing the right flank of the bio-armor, decomposing the functional organs within into molecules. Lolos shrieked in pain, the feedback from his pain system sending sharp stings through his cerebral cortex. He endured the pain, rotating his upper body, and, using the advantage of the turn, swept his bone blades out again. Clang. HMPH. Urian grunted, a sharp pain shooting through his shield-holding left hand, and he was sent flying by the furious force, shield and all. He landed on the ground, his armor scraping against the gravel with a rustling sound, sliding several meters before stopping. In a brief moment, Urian immediately stood up from the ground, dust coating his armor. Lolos raised his blades and pursued, his omnidirectional legs moving somewhat in coordinated ly. The previous sword thrust had injured a vital part of his bio-armor. Though Urian appeared disheveled, he was not fatally wounded, and he uttered a mocking remark, a beast with no skill. He immediately pressed forward, closing in on Lolos, raising his left-hand shield to its highest point, blocking the bone blade at close range to prevent further momentum. A crisp sound rang out, the shield blocked a downward chopping bone blade, its power indeed severely diminished. The power sword parried, blocking a sweeping bone blade. The Rangdan Warmaster's strength made the longsword tremble. Urian's mind raced, and he subtly tilted the longsword inward to deflect the force. Bone blade and sword edge scraped, the disintegrating fields tearing at each other, the blades sparking with lightning. Urian again lowered his body, retracting his shield and longsword, dodging Lolos' double attack. He slid again, thrusting his power sword, piercing the bio-armor at the waist, the sharp blade emerging from Lolos' lower back. You damnable rat! Lolos shrieked, his painful wail echoing across the battlefield, making the Warmaster's guards anxious. Unfortunately, all Rangdan were currently tied up, and no one could break away to provide support. Why? Lolos couldn't understand. His height and strength were superior, his movements more agile, yet he couldn't hit the human's body, letting him escape again and again while constantly launching counterattacks. Organs under the ribs damaged, waste organs damaged, bionutrients flowing from the ruptured holes. If this continued, the bio-armor would lose its power source, becoming a lifeless object at the mercy of others. A beast with no skill. Urian repeated his words. What is skill? Lolos couldn't understand. Is skill truly that important? A fierce light flashed in his eyes, and an idea came to mind. He could defeat the human's superior moves even without skill. So he charged again, extending his two bionic arms, his two bone blades attacking in a cross pattern, like pincers biting at the black-armored warrior. Seeing the Rangdan Warmaster's guard wide open again, he rejoiced, raising his shield and striding forward, ready to repeat the previous scene. The shield blocked one bone blade, the longsword parried the other bone blade, but the anticipated struggle of strength did not come. Not good. Urian's inner self realized something was wrong, but it was too late to withdraw. Lolo's figure did not stop. He strode forward, his outstretched arms forming an embrace, pulling Urian into his chest. Now you have nowhere to escape. The Xeno Warmaster grinned viciously, intending to crush Urian in his embrace. Urian had no escape. In a life-or-death decision, he raised his longsword and aimed it at Lolo's control room. Bioarmor and ceramite armor embraced, and Lolo's tentacles from behind struck out, single-molecule blades piercing towards the Grand Master. In an instant, pain surged as the single-molecule blades penetrated the ceramite armor. Urian turned his head to dodge the blade but felt his second heart pierced, his liver shredded by the blade, and multiple parts of his back impaled by the sharp blades. Urian felt a wave of dizziness, and multiple organs within his body activated to maintain his bodily functions. His Luramen organ immediately took effect, with Luramen cells rapidly secreting to staunch the bleeding wounds on his body. His heart thumped violently, ensuring his brain received ample blood supply for timely thought. Combat stims from his power armor were instantly injected, temporarily returning his severely wounded body to its peak. Calls from Legion warriors reached his ears, his consciousness instantly cleared, and Urian tightened his grip on the sword hilt, which was about to slip, thrusting it forward with force. There's no way I'm dying with you. Blood spurted from his breathing grill as Urian's power sword pierced through Lolo's bio-armor. The disintegration field shredded internal organs, advancing unstoppably, piercing through the diaphragm within the bio-armor. Lolos had been congratulating himself on his certain victory, but his armor suddenly blared in alarm as the glint of a sharp blade appeared in the cockpit. No! It let out a shrill, unwilling cry, manipulating its bionic arms with force, trying to pull the human in its embrace away. But the blade didn't withdraw. Instead, it drew closer and closer, the disintegrating lightning swirling around it, evaporating the bio-nutrient fluid. Outside, Urian, with one hand holding the sword thrust in, used his other hand to grip a protrusion on the bio-armor, pushing the sword deeper. Two bionic arms gripped his waist, and the power sword transmitted a stretching alarm, yet it couldn't deter his resolve. Go away! Go away! As the longsword continued to press closer, Lolo's voice was tinged with a whimper, now utterly panicked. If it had been a swift decapitation, it would have felt no fear, but the steadily approaching death terrified the Xeno's Warmaster. It could feel the disintegrating lightning gnawing at its body, slowly breaking its form apart. Lolo's body recoiled, pressing against the edge of the cockpit, its tentacles pushing forward with maximum effort to retreat. The longsword continued its advance, pressing against its dark green, brain-like body, piercing the wrinkled skin and disintegrating the green brain tissue. Blood gushed from Urian's mouth, and he felt his waist was about to break. His vision began to blacken, his brain incessantly blared alarms, and his succinate membrane began to take effect. He was about to be forcibly put into stasis. Die. His lungs were filled with blood, making his words sound hollow. Finally, Urian mustered his last strength, thrusting the longsword into Lolo's cockpit. Ha ha. The bio-armor ceased movement, and he knew he had killed his enemy, letting out a relieved laugh. His will instantly relaxed, and Urian fell from Lolo's embrace, collapsing into the arms of a Legion warrior. Too much had happened in this flash of lightning. The Legion guard rushed forward, caught his body, and took him to the rear for treatment. With the Warmaster slain, the Rangdan morale plummeted, and the Xenos were overwhelmed by the Nur auxiliary army in despair. The enraged 1st Legion dragged away the remains of the Rangdan Warmaster Lolos. They intended to make a specimen of it. Victory. The mortal auxiliary army stood on high ground, shouting, planting their banners in the piles of Rangdan corpses, declaring the end of the ground war. Victory. The roar, like a mountain in a tsunami, echoed through communications. The auxiliary army shed tears of excitement. They finally felt the reality of victory, tasting its sweet flavor. The ground-clearing war ended, and space operations were also nearing their conclusion. The battle moon was destroyed, the Rangdan lost their interstellar anchor, and their fleet morale was low. Just as the Rangdan intended to retreat, the human fleet pounced, engaging them in a fierce battle, completely cutting off any thoughts of escape. The star-filled void was littered with the wreckage of warships. In the human fleet's counterattack, few Rangdan warships remained. At the edge of the star system, warp light flared, and stragglers, dragging the exhaustion of defeat, left the Morse solar system. Russ boarded the Rangdan flagship, leading his Wolf Guard to kill the Rangdan Warmaster, claiming his share of the glory. Ultimately, in the battle for the Morse solar system, humanity paid a heavy price to defeat the Rangdan. Blaskowitz stepped down from the command throne, letting out a sigh of relief. The fleet had lost 30% of its ships. With no warship intact, repairs were necessary. The 1st Legion fleet suffered over 50% losses. If not for the 3 Gloriana-class battleships, the losses would have been even more severe. The Abomination Exemplar was severely damaged, with 40% of its hull compromised, teetering on the brink of sinking. The Space Wolves fleet lost 2/5 of its ships. The Space Wolves fought bravely and fiercely, charging into enemy fleets, relentlessly clinging to the foe, and holding back the Rangdan warships. After this battle, the human side lost over 200 capital ships in total, destroying nearly 500 Rangdan capital ships and 3 battle moons. The most abundant spoils of war, however, were tens of thousands of elite Rangdan warriors. Humanity concluded its first engagement with the Rangdan with a respectable victory. Blaskowitz stood by the Royal Majesty's viewport, watching wreckage drift by, mixed with frozen human corpses and the grotesque bodies of Rangdan slave soldiers. He gazed into the profound deep space, the stirring in his heart gradually subsiding. The Rangdan war was temporarily over, both sides needed to lick their wounds, awaiting the next, more intense clash. Notify Terra to send construction personnel to fortify Morse into a fortress star system. He wanted to transform Morse into a bridgehead, the first line of defense against the Rangdan. The Rangdan's arrival at Morse was by no means accidental. They intended to use it as a springboard to expand towards the Imperium, and the next battle would likely occur in this nearby sector. Early arrangements now would prevent the predicament of war reigniting. Blaskowitz did not turn back, continuously making post-war arrangements. Use my authority to notify the 5th Legion to dispatch more scout fleets to locate the Rangdan Empire's territory and homeworld. Keep all legions on high alert. The Rangdan priority is raised to the highest, and if Morse faces any further changes, nearby legions must provide swift support. The military conscription authority, issued by the Emperor, was to allow Blaskowitz to act expediently, to handle situations like today's. Notify the newer stars to prevent Rangdan infiltration. They know nothing about us and will surely seek to gather our intelligence. Sophia, behind him, noted down her master's instructions, having the astropath choir transmit them one by one. Oh, that's right. Blaskowitz turned to ask Sophia, how are the banquets coming along? He had never forgotten his promise to Russ, to host a banquet for the Space Wolves, to reward the Space Wolves for their aid. Coaxing Russ into the most brutal battle with a feast, this small matter must not disappoint his brother. Preparations have begun, Sophia replied calmly and slowly. The garden deck is being cleaned, removing traces of war, and will soon be ready for the banquet. Very good, thank you. Blaskowitz smiled at her. If not for Sophia, his chief steward, he would have had to arrange all of this himself. Serving you is my vow. Sophia lifted her skirt, curtsied elegantly, and slowly faded away. The fleet gathered its remaining forces within the star system, assembling at their respective positions to consolidate the specific losses after the war. In a battle of such immense scale, the deaths and sacrifices were countless. For high-ranking officials like Blaskowitz, it might just be numbers reported, but a somber atmosphere permeated the human fleet. Countless shipboard thralls lost their lives in the battle. A single breached airlock on a warship meant the sacrifice of many mortals. The fleet dispatched specialized ships to recover bodies, committing their comrades' remains to the star, allowing them to sleep with the light. As for the vile Xenos, plasma incinerators were their final resting place. The two were essentially no different, yet represented two distinct meanings. Some were to be hated, others to be remembered. Soon, Several Terran days later, a large amount of data was compiled before Blaskowitz. Send fast ships back to Terra, and bring back metals when they return. Blaskowitz rubbed his temples, and after verifying everything, sent it to Terra. The data was vast and voluminous, containing not only casualty figures but also a massive amount of meritorious service to be recognized. This kind of databased information could not be transmitted via astropaths. Its complexity was one reason, another was the difficulty for astropaths to accurately describe precise numbers. My brother, is your banquet ready? Russ sent a holographic communication, his wild face showing a hint of fatigue. The space wolves had suffered significant losses, and Russ suppressed his sorrow, showing his most unfeeling side. It is ready. Blaskowitz nodded gravely. He was grateful for Russ' magnanimity, fighting with all his might during the operation, silently enduring the Legion's losses after the war, and bearing the grief of his son's sacrifices. It was time for a good drink. To wash away sorrow and rekindle morale. Blaskowitz looked at Russ, everything in spoken. Once the fleet has finished its affairs, I will drink with you to our heart's content. The men of Fenris await Argent Noor's hospitality. Russ grinned broadly, making Blaskowitz sometimes wonder if his brother was truly foolish or just pretending. We will certainly not disappoint your expectations.